Good evening, school board members, superintendent, district staff, and community members. The time is now 5:02 p.m. on April 22nd, 2026, and I call this board workshop of the Edgewood Independent School District School Board to order. I'm very pleased that you took the time to join us this evening in compliance with the State Government Code 551 for Open Meetings Act. Tonight's agenda has been appropriately posted. This is a meeting in a public entity, not a meeting of the public. As our guests, you are welcome to observe and listen. These proceedings are being video and audio recorded and will become part of Edgewood ISD's permanent record. To ensure the recording accurately reflects these proceedings, please silence your mobile devices and refrain from talking while others are speaking. Since it is legally mandated that these proceedings are recorded accurately, I may have to ask for order periodically should I notice that disruptions are interfering with our recording capabilities. Once again, I extend to each of you a sincere welcome from the entire Edgewood ISD School Board. Next is roll call. Ms. Martha Casilla is on her way. Mr. Frank Espinosa.
Present.
Mr. Rachel Santoyo. Here. Mr. Rudy Lopez.
Present.
Mr. Michael Valdez. Right here. Mr. Sergio Delgado.
Here.
Here. And myself, Dr. James Hernandez is present. Let the record show that the quorum of the Edgewood Independent School District School Board is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act. We do have one speaker, so Mr. Espinosa, can you read the...
Communications from citizens. Our next item on the agenda is communications from citizens. This is a time for community staff and students to provide their comments to the school board. To have your comments heard tonight, your name and specific agenda item must have been submitted in person or signed up online with the board operations manager. Each speaker will have 3 minutes or less, depending on the number of people who have signed up to speak. Non-English speakers who require a translator may receive up to 6 minutes to speak in order to have their comments translated into English. 3 minutes for English and 3 minutes for the translator to translate. The presiding officer of the meeting may modify or waive these time limits as appropriate. In accordance with Edgewood ISD Board Policy BED Local, the board shall not tolerate disruption of the meeting by members of the audience. Speakers or others who engage in disruptive behavior may be ruled out of order by the presiding officer. Disruptive behavior and action include but not limited to racial slurs, insulting, profane, threatening, derogatory, or abusive language, making violent or threatening gestures. Public comment is not intended for the speakers to make allegations of employee or student misconduct, requests for employee or student discipline, personal attacks on individuals, or disclosing information about district employees or students. If an individual makes a complaint, I, as the presiding officer, will interrupt you, ask you to stop, and direct you to seek resolution of your complaint through the district's appropriate formal grievance policy, DGBA, for employee complaints, FNG for student or parent complaints, and GF for public complaints. If after at least one warning from the presiding officer, any person continues to disrupt the meeting by their words or actions, the presiding officer may request assistance from law enforcement officials to have the person escorted from the meeting. By law, the Edgewood Independent School District Board of Trustees cannot lawfully discuss, deliberate, make comments, or make a decision on any matter raised in the public comment period that is not included on the agenda posted with notice of the meeting. Specific factual information or recitation of existing policy may be furnished in response to inquiries, but the board shall not deliberate or make decisions regarding any subject that is not included on the agenda posted with notice of the meeting. Signs, placards, or banners shall not be allowed in the boardroom. If you have any handouts to distribute to the board members, please hand them to the board operations manager to my left.
Thank you, sir. All right, we have one speaker, Mr. Eddie Rodriguez. Yes, the podium. And 3 minutes. Is there a light on that? It should be green. Okay.
I think it's on there.
Yes.
Okay. So, good afternoon, presentation.
Make sure, because it doesn't pick up, make sure you're speaking into the microphone. Yeah, because it's not the video.
That's off now, it's red, right? If it's green, it's on.
If it's green, it's on.
Yes, great. Yeah, just speak closer, please.
Okay. Good afternoon, members of the board, Mr. Board President, members of the board, Mr. Superintendent. My name is Dr. Luis Rodriguez. Yesterday, I came and addressed you with the importance of yesterday's meeting, which had to do with the approval of a lot of policies. And I just wanted to make sure I continue with that conversation due to the fact that, as I was telling the board president just now, a little while ago, was if you see the word which, or you see the word such, or you see the word shall or will or the word must, that's when it becomes very, very critical when you look at policy, especially because some of the policies that have to be reviewed have to do with employees. A lot of it has to do with that. So make sure that you actually understand that and that you look at that. One of the biggest concerns that I have is after looking at today's agenda at the very front, it has the superintendent's priorities. If you go to the doctor and the doctor tells you that your blood pressure is great, and then you go home and you have a stroke, it means that the instrument that you used was not measuring your blood pressure accurately. Because most of the time, one of the main factors for a stroke is high blood pressure. So if we have a school district that has things that are not happening when compared to other school districts who are taking the same assessment, then what we need to do is look at the instrument that we're using for evaluation of our superintendent and of everybody else that's here. We need to look at that. There isn't an instrument that is being utilized, a template that everybody uses.
So I'm gonna pause because when you signed 3A, so team of eight training, so make sure we stick to
Sure.
the team of eight training, please.
I just want to go back and say, when you look at different instruments, Maxwell talks about it. I read this book about Maxwell, and it talks about leadership. And in order for leadership to be effective, we have to have accountability. And if the instrument that you're using to measure anything, whatever it is, and in this case, the one employee that I mentioned yesterday, is not effective, then we need to review that instrument. And if you need assistance with that, Region 20 has it, TASC has that instrument where you can go ahead and look at that. It's critical. Any decision that you make according to leadership, as a board member, has to be in the best interest of kids. In the best interest of kids. Anything else is not gonna happen. And in the best interest financially, hey, that's one of the priorities. Student success, that's one of the priorities. I was thinking about leadership and thinking about financially. I mean, money in the school district is a necessary evil. We need it. I mean, we can't do without it. And unfortunately, we have less and less every year. And it's all has to do with ADA and all of this. Leadership, this book in Maxwell will talk about that. It'll tell you about that. So again, use an instrument that's gonna give you the best accountability measure of what you're looking at. Because there's people in the school district who are waking up and we're aware of what's happening. Thank you for your time, I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, sir. All right, our next item is the team of eight training. Go ahead, sir.
So, again, welcome everybody. Go ahead and open this up this evening. We have three. Hello? Okay. So, this evening, we are going to continue our conversation. I believe we are now in our fourth team of eight training for this calendar year. By calendar year, I mean 25, 26. And we are now closing out this year and preparing for 26, 27. So, obviously, we will continue with that. But tonight we're going to talk about some of the items that you're going to see here. So we're going to continue with the conversation about Team of Eight training and why. Why is it important that we continue with Team of Eight training? We're going to talk about the legacy in action in terms of your work as a board member and working as a cohesive unit. We're going to have two presenters for that. We're going to have Ms. Terry Salinas, and then we have our representative from Region 20 that's going to be assisting. So both individuals are going to be coming up and presenting. We're going to be using our leadership book, so this is why I asked you to bring your book. We're going to focus in on chapters 7 and 8. And then we have our gentleman that's coming in from leadership from TASB. That's right, I was about to go out TASB. Dr. Tijerina Mauro, and I saw everybody came up and said hi to him, so thank you. And then, of course, that'll just be part of this conversation around board development. So I don't have to explain in here the pictures and things that are on here. You know why I use those. This is my way of reinforcing the work that you're doing, and more importantly, the time that you're donating for us, and for the duty that you've been called to do as a board member in terms of walking schools, talking to principals, and talking to kids when you're out in schools. So again, that is what today is about. So I'm going to bring us back to this conversation that I started with you guys last year around the leadership pipeline that we learned as a school district. If you recall, we partnered with the HEB, the HEB Foundation, the Holdsworth Center, around leadership pipeline. When I came to you on these conversations, I asked that we engage in a conversation about these four areas, about leading ourselves as trustees first and foremost. And you know, I've been giving this a lot of thought. When I say leading self, you're more than just a trustee. You're also men and women who are coming in with various fields of experience. Some of you have been officers, some of you were managers in the city of San Antonio, some of you work for Valero, some of you work for the San Antonio Fire Department, some of you are teachers, and so on and so forth. So there's work that you're already bringing in and you've been contributing And of course, we get to see that every month during our meetings and during our questioning sessions. Then we moved on to how do we lead others in the community? And obviously the first community or the first ecosystem you're working in is this team of 8. And how are you leading within this group? And then we start moving towards leader of leaders, right? Some of you are in officer roles today. Some of you are sitting on committees. We talked about the policy committee. And then of course your work as a board member in continuing to understand how budgets are developed, how items are brought for your consideration and discussion, how policy is brought up. You guys just approved policy 126. Thank you, our 2 trustees and Mr. Williams, who led that discussion. And then, of course, you'll hear every year about things like our tax rate, our compressed rate, and things like that. So, if you were at Roosevelt this week, you heard Ms. Martinez talk a little bit to you about the budget and where the budget recommendations are for the next school year. In fact, last night I mentioned to you that we would be bringing some of the beginning compensation recommendations at the May 5th workshop meeting, because obviously we are talking about strategic compensation, so there'll be more conversations about that. And so again, the leadership book is going to be the vehicle that we're going to use to continue with these conversations. I know there's going to be a lot of opportunities to talk in Ms. Salinas' section as well as in Dr. Tijerina's section as well. So again, this is just a different view of what I just discussed. And tonight, we're going to focus on chapter 7 and 8. And today we're going to talk about the ladder climbing to ladder building. So how are you building ladders for other leaders within the school district? Not necessarily just on the board. A lot of you also, this will apply to your own work and your own personal lives. But how do we continue to climb that ladder and build opportunities for other people? Because obviously, legacy boards are boards that are working to replace themselves. We won't always be on the board. I won't always be the superintendent here. And so we have to continue to build a legacy for the future. And then the 8th is, how do you connect? How do you go from directing and shifting your communication to actually connecting with people? And I think I've said this to you many times. You get an opportunity to connect with people every time you shake someone's hand, every time you're speaking on the dais, every time you go to a school, every time you come to these trainings. You're always modeling what's appropriate behavior, regardless of what you see in the room. Remember, you're your own leader, and what you reflect is the work and the legacy that you're leaving behind. And so with that said, I'm going to go ahead and start asking our first presenters to go up, because my part is pretty short. But the other thing we're going to build tonight is also, as always, continue that definition around what's trust. I don't need to read that to you, because that's one thing that I've come to expect about this group, knowing what to expect from each of you. And so that trust building continues tonight with this exercise. And then also honoring our 3 core values. Remembering that people matter, growth matters, and goals matter. And that applies to this board as well. So again, you already saw this. This does fall within your responsibilities of the board, and you see those responsibilities listed there. Adopting the annual budget, tax rate, obviously educational policies, and working and collaborating with the superintendent. That's part of the work that the board does collectively as a group. And then these are just some of the responsibilities that I have as the superintendent in terms of where my work lies that falls within the administrative side of the work, not the governance. There's a distinction there. And I know Dr. Tijerina is going to be talking to you guys about that this evening. It does fall within the board operating procedures, these types of events. And then, of course, ultimately, it honors the work we're doing with regards to our Vision 2028. And so I'll close with this as I transition. Remember, as you're working tonight, this still remains the number one thing we want to focus on. Everything we do as a school, as individuals, has to be focused around that number one chair in our schools, which is what? Our students. So with that said, I will turn it over to Ms. Salinas. Where are you? I'm just showing pictures.
Okay.
There you go.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for joining us here today. I will say that you're getting a bonus chapter. We are going to cover chapter 9 too, and then we'll close out the next time with 10, 11, and 12 so that we have some, they're not even numbers, but equal content that we cover. And so I want to just go ahead and ground us in our norms. These were norms that you all established several years ago. When we first began our journey into this book, we revisited these norms. We felt these were still good. Again, I put them out there so you all can see them. Not going to read them, but as we continue to grow together, Want to let you all know that if there's ever a norm that you want to challenge, or a norm you feel needs to be recalibrated, or a norm that needs to be added, please share that with us as we continue through our journey here. These were your standards of integrity, and as you can see, these standards of integrity do align really well with those established norms. Again, our goal is to align our district leadership definition and co-create a definition that's aligned to this with your definition of leadership and what that means for you on a personal level and at the district level as you continue to govern our district. These are the core principles of our trainings. These haven't changed. We'll continue to use these regardless of what content is being rolled in, because these are things that are aligned to everything else we do in our district, and they're aligned to good leadership. So where have we been? This is going to be our 5th session. It's been a minute. If you look back, we started in February of 2025, and here we are, April 2026. So it's been a long journey. And so we're going to start today just kind of giving you the foundations again around what are the keys to shifting. These are the things that you're going to constantly need to be aware of, regardless of what it is that you're doing and what situation you have in front of you. These are the qualities that you need to kind of think about. So it's continually learn and unlearn and relearn. And unlearning is really hard to do because it's based on our experiences and those types of things. Value yesterday but live in today. We can't always hold on to the past with such, fierceness that it hinders our ability to forecast and to create solutions for the future. Then you see rely on speed but thrive on timing. Sometimes you might have a great idea, it's just not the right time to implement it. And so this is really key as you think about, even when you choose to engage in a conversation or you choose to challenge, timing is everything, context is everything. See the big picture as the big picture gets bigger. Again, future forecasting, understanding what the ripple effects of the actions of today are in terms of how they replay themselves out tomorrow. And then move forward courageously in the midst of uncertainty. And I think we all live here far too often, but it is the new normal, that things are going to rapidly change and we need to be constantly ready for that change. So we're going to start today with where we ended the last time we met, back in December. So you all recall, you all kind of thought about what your next conversation was going to be, a difficult conversation. You did a little role playing. As you reflect on how that learning and your experiences have carried you into the months that came after that learning, wanted to start by having you all just do a little think aloud, have a little conversation with your colleague there to your right, and we can sit in and have conversation with you as well, and you are welcome to join, sir. I'm sure we would love to have your thoughts on this. But really wanted to know, what did your last difficult conversation sound like? What went well, and what could you have done to improve the outcome? This could be a professional conversation, work, colleague, loved one. What happened as a result of that conversation? Y'all can take some time to talk to each other, and we'll do a little share out, right? So low risk, you think about it first, then you engage with your colleague, next your elbow partner, and then we do a little share out so the risk level kind of goes up, okay? Any questions? No, it could be anything. Just a recent experience that you had. Remember the last time we met, we talked about what are some steps that'll help me have a conversation that's hard to have. How can I do it by, staying in my humanity? How can I do it by getting my point across? So what did yours sound like? Sure. And it's okay if it was a bad one. You could say, man, I messed up. It was hard for me to check my anger at the door. Yes, y'all get a few minutes to talk. time to engage in discussion. And so I'll go ahead and open the floor now for anyone that wants to share some essential learning that you got around these questions.
So,
It wasn't a, I mean, I guess it was a difficult conversation, where, from what it led from. I was personal, not personal, but on a personal level. I guess there's a little backstory to it. Me and God got a big fight about politics. She left the house, she drove to her sister's, she came back, and, so, at first, it was like, what are we gonna do? So, that conversation, I guess, was probably my last difficult conversation, that we would no longer be talking about politics at the house, due to, you know, what it leads to. What went well from that was that, we both now understand, you know, what's, not for me, but for her, it's a touchy subject, and for me not to, I guess, bring it up anymore inside the house, and that way it doesn't lead to anything, more and more outbursts or like that of sorts. So, I don't think anything else could have improved that outcome from, besides us talking about it, getting it done, and it ending just the way it did.
So, as we think about what Mr. Delgado just shared, what are y'all's thoughts in terms of how that connects to shifting? How that connects to how you anchor into the principles of unlearning, relearning, and those keys to shifting? Does anybody have anything that came to mind when they thought about that? We got an hour, but I want to give some wait time, so let's go. Let's go.
can you repeat?
Yeah, as we heard from Mr. Delgado about the situation that he shared around the conversation he had that was difficult, right? That it got a little heated, came back, they found their center, and they came to some agreement, right? Around what are gonna be our rules of engagement around this topic so that they don't go back to that place. So does anybody have anything they would like to add to that story? Or anything similar, or any connection to the text?
Well, that's when I'm not married anymore.
Thank you, Mr. Espinosa.
That's how you take care of it.
Appreciate that.
But don't do what I did, okay?
Yes, thank you, okay.
First, thank you for sharing.
Thank you for sharing. So what I see is that as a leader of, as one of the leaders of Edgewood, it takes a lot to lead. And what I saw from that is you being an empathetic leader. Understanding that yes, you might have different ideological views, but you understand that everybody like has kind of a still, but what kind of struck me for me was the importance of communication. I think if you went, you all being very clear about the elements of engagement together. I think that often we let ourselves, we're humans, and when we let ourselves drive in our ideological views based on our experiences, our perspective, and often our perspective is not always the right, but the fact that you were born vulnerable as a leader, that's a lot. As a leader, you need to lead with dignity, and you empathizing that probably your perspective is not the same as theirs, but you were able to move past that and value that the relationship is bigger than the ideological differences. So I think sharing.
Yeah. Yes.
So, building off of that, we sort of touched on this in our conversation. I think as leaders, we have to, so cognizance of what we think and what we believe is always really important. You hear the word agency. Do you have agency? Are you so aware? When we walk in a room, as leaders and just as human beings, we walk in with predispositions already. So I think it's appropriate that we are aware of those and be at least willing to unlearn something that we might think is a conviction as Why? Because sometimes salvaging the relationship of the whole, whether it's a group of individuals, which could be like the board, or that one relationship, is important in that instance. Time, I always say, time reveals all. I think we've all heard that expression. Over time, we all, through our habits, through how we talk, through how we say things, we really demonstrate who we are. So I started with a conversation of trust is when I know what to expect of you. So I think now, 8 years in, almost 9, for most of us, and then of course now with additional folks, you start picking up on patterns, and I think part of leading is just also being open to establishing that rule of engagement. And sometimes those change. You may start out in one place, and it could change within the next year, because as human beings, I think, and as boards and superintendents, we have to remember there are outside influences that affect us too. Whether it's the city, the state, the nation, our families, our partners, or whoever, that also ends up in this room. And so that's what I take away from them, because I thought about just over the last 3 years, I remind myself, board members and superintendents are people too. I think Dr. T and I have been talking about this before I got here. We are people and we are human and we will make mistakes. Humility is the difference between a good leader and a great leader. That's been a conviction of mine. I don't have a problem saying I made a mistake. I had a conversation with one of my team. I'm gonna look at that table because they know what I'm talking about. I had a conversation with one of my team members this morning, and I picked up on something today. I'm gonna say something that's gonna sound, I'm gonna use a different word now, but not because I said I remember the word. I'm gonna say something that sounds really curt, and it's probably gonna sound that way, but I'm trying to understand. I'm trying to learn. Now, I could have been out there, you can't talk to me like that. Not if you're gonna have an environment where people need to be able to coach you also. And I know that's not easy, guys. You've seen me over the years. Some days, you know, what the Bible says, some days it's hard to love our enemies. It just is what it is, right? That's life. But you can still bounce back and pick something from it. Just keep going. It's more important to serve. That's what I would say.
And what Dr. Rich is to add on to that, the lens of LSG, remember we had those little cards that we used to prepare yourselves for that, to prepare a conversation. Once you had one of those difficult conversations, we gave you step-by-step directions on how do I repair that conversation through the Lodestar Governance Way.
I am the Genesis.
I am the genesis of transformation.
I love that. And if you go back to page 96, when you started, and you did that little inventory, Mr. Delgado, it sounds like you've invested in the relationship enough to be candid with them. So you had already done some front loading there. It also sounds like you were willing and able to set clear and specific expectations, right, for how you were going to move past this. And so I think those are all important. And then one of the things that's really important, you know, is does this conversation clearly serve their interest and not just mine? So being able to meet each other in the middle, and each other is this collective team, right? The team that sits on the sidelines and the team that sits in line with you. So thank you for that. That was just a warm-up. And so we're going to get started into the content of chapters 7, 8, 9. I'm not going to say here, you all have seen this, but these are just some of the things that we're going to be talking about today in terms of directing, connecting, ladder building, and then looking at uniformity. And so in chapter 7, we really talk about the reproductive shift, and Dr. Hernandez led the way with talking about building ladders, right? It's not just about you climbing ladders, but it's about you building ladders. Dr. Hernandez mentioned how, you know, you have to be open in order to be coached, right? So you're constantly trying to understand the people that you lead so that you can build a ladder for them, and that's really important. So wanted to spend some time, and Mr. Delgado and Mr. Espinosa will kick us off. I know, Mr. Delgado, you've already shared, so we're gonna let Mr. Espinosa kick off the conversation with the story, and then you all, the rest of you are gonna jump in. It's just kind of to kick off the discussion. And so this is just a quick 60, 90-second story. I want you all to think about who held the ladder for you in your journey, at some point in time in your journey? Who gave you the opportunity for advocacy or coaching or protection at a key moment? Who came in and advocated for you when you weren't at the table or in the room? Or maybe when you weren't. What did they do specifically that made you, that made the difference? How did that change who you are today? And how did that change the trajectory of your leadership? And you don't have to answer all three. I want you to think about all of these in terms of who held the ladder for you? Who helped you grow in a way that you can look back on it now and say, man, that changed me, that one pivotal time. And I know there's lots of things that happen in our lifetime that create who we are, but there's always someone that we can point to or the one time they said something that now you use and with others maybe, or that's always in the back of your mind. So I'm gonna stop there and give you all an opportunity to think, and while we do that, Mr. Espinosa, did you have enough time to think, and you wanna kick us off for answering one of those questions, or do you need a minute?
I'm ready.
Okay, let's go.
I don't need my mic.
No, you're gonna kick off the conversation.
I don't need you, sir.
I'll hold that at a-
I know you won't. All right, guys, so it took me 8 years to get my degree. Tough 8 years. And so I started as an intern at Valero. This was before you were born, James, 1996. So I get interviewed. I'm older than the other kids that are also interviewing for the internship, right? So I felt like Robert De Niro, I guess, the intern. But it was 3 supervisors in accounting, okay? The most boring department ever, but I love accounting. Okay, just so you know.
I am watching.
So I get interviewed by 3 individuals. One was a female. She was actually the one that I started working for. Her name is Mary Trujillo, who was Mary Healy, Maria Healy, and she's an Edgewood graduate. And she graduated, or my dad would have graduated the same year, 1968, but because of me, my dad didn't graduate. So with a small world, landing at Valero, doing the internship, 2 years later, I get my degree, I start working. But I didn't know until later that Ms. Trujillo, she fought for me. Not because my grades were, I'm average, 3.5, the average, low, the average. But she saw something, she saw perseverance, she saw coachability. She saw something that she valued, and she fought for me to get hired. So as an intern, then I proved myself enough that I got hired. So that's my story.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Mr. Delgado? Do you have anything you want to add to that before we open it up? Yes,
I have a
please.
thought, because we're talking about somebody holding the ladder. But at different points in our lives, there's somebody different holding the ladder for us. And I can think back to high school, my science teacher being that person that was holding the ladder. And one thing that she used to always, and it stays with you all the time, was, one thing she used to say all the time was, if you're not a part of the solution, then you're part of the problem. And that's all I'll say to me. And that's one of those things that I kind of teach as I go along. And as a president of a neighborhood association, there was a point when I had to climb that ladder, and there was nobody there holding it for me. Our president had to step away. We didn't know where she was. We couldn't talk to her. It turned out her daughter was passing away. But we had, the Baptist hospital right there on 90 and Compass. She was working on that project, and they couldn't get a hold of her, so I had to jump in and take care of that project. There was nobody there holding the ladder for me, but sometimes we're on that ladder, and we're forced to go up that ladder, and we're forced to act. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, depending where you're at in your life, there's always going to be somebody different at that ladder, and sometimes there's not going to be somebody at that ladder. But you've got to learn how to climb that ladder and bring others along with you.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that observation and the strength you had to climb the ladder, the willingness you had, the confidence, the skills that led you to be able to say, I'm going to go ahead and jump in. Someone built that along the way, right? And you learned along the way to be ready for that. And sometimes, you're right, the ladder's not going to be there, but the lessons will be. And it's up to us to determine whether or not we're going to look back to head up the ladder. Anybody else? I haven't heard from Mr. Santoyo. Are you going to wait for your turn in chapter?
No, sure. There was a turning point in my life when I graduated high school, and I said, okay, you know, I got into Stanford, and I said, okay, I'm gonna do it. So there I go, with the blessings of my family, and it was to say it was hard is an understatement, but I remember one particular. It was my freshman year. I knew we would travel by car from California to back home, and the person who was driving the car was also a graduate of Kennedy. So we knew each other. He was like 2 years ahead of me, and we weren't, you know, the best of friends in high school. So he drove us home and for break. And when it came time for the end of the break, he called me and said, "Hey," he said, "You ready to go? We're gonna do it." I said, "No, I'm not going back." I said, "You kidding me?" He said, "No." He said, I can't handle it. So he didn't try and talk me out of it, but he was kind of bothered by the fact that, you know, here it was, he's in the same environment, in the same neighborhood, went to the same high school, and he didn't offer that I remember any words of encouragement. The one who did kick me in the rear, though, at the time, was my father. Once he found out that this guy had left, you know, the vehicle or whatever, and he asked me, he said, "Well, when are you going back?" I said, "I'm not." He said, "What do you mean you're not?" I said, "No." He said, I'm not going back." He went and bought me a plane ticket. He said, "You're going to get yourself on that plane and go back to school." And that's what I did. I went back. It took me a while to finish, but you talk about holding the ladder. My family had been holding the ladder for that many years, and that particular time, I was, you know, halfway up the ladder, and he said, "No," he said, "You're going to finish with it." Not done with the exact words, but you can finish it. And I did.
Thank you for sharing. And now I'm going to kind of switch it up a little bit. We've made some personal connections, and now look at our governance connection.
So when looking at this through the lens of governance and Lone Star governance, excuse me, on page 129, it talks about it's not me, it's about them. It's not me, it's about them. How do I hold that ladder and build that, help that other person, like Mr. Satoya was talking about, with the help that he had building his ladder and making sure that they can continue to go up. As a trustee, who's it about? Say it again? The kids. And the key words are what students know and are able to do. Those are the key words at the governance level, ensuring that our students are moving forward in their goals, their goal progress measures, and all the things that this wonderful team over here brings before you with the superintendent at your board meetings. Monitoring those goals, monitoring that the students are moving forward. The essence of Lone Star governance. having those procedures and processes in place, and keeping the main thing, just like it says here, it's not about me, it's about them, the students. Questions? I know there's a lot going on as Dr. H said, in the state, in the district, in the nation, and a lot more coming out from the state. So how do we keep the main thing the main thing? Yeah, I know you've had some huge discussions and conversations lately about some of your schools and had to make some very challenging decisions, but you did it through the lens of what's best for kids. Keeping the main thing, and that's hard. That's very challenging. It sounds easy and just words, but it's when you live that action like you do with LSG, the kids are going to come out ahead.
And as we think about the kids coming out ahead, can anyone here provide a few examples of what ladders is our district currently building for others to climb? What are some of the things that you've learned and heard about around what we are doing, what you are approving, recommending in terms of what's happening in our schools that's building ladders?
Homegrown.
Great example. Residency models, pipelines, what else? How else is this board building ladders in our community and for our staff and students?
I want to say approving travel out of state or out of town, out of state travel. I think those are big deals. I think those are, for me, they're those high impact experiences, those life changing experiences that, and I think I mentioned this at our board meeting previously, that to me it's worth a week out of normal school days to do those trips, because those are the life changing ones. They're not going to forget those. They might forget a week of school. Not necessarily the content of the experiences, but they're not going to forget that out of state or out of town travel. It's a big deal.
I would say the allotment for the teachers, the teacher allotment, that showing that, hey, showing teachers, hey, we care about you, that we're willing to invest in your growth as well. So, not saying we don't have quality teachers, but that way we can draw in, more teachers, to help cover some of the shortages we have.
I'll go back to the pipeline, the residency programs that Mr. Espinosa mentioned. We just hired our first student that came through the entire pipeline through Adam Memorial and is now coming back, having gone to college. She's hired for the next school year, so she'll be one of our, bilingual teachers next fall. So again, that's a big part of investments to include the experiences and everything else that the TIA mentioned.
Thank you for looking at this from the governance lens and then being able to think about everything you all are doing for the students that we all serve. So now we're going to move over to Chapter 8. I know our two board members aren't here, but Dr. Hernandez and both Hernandezes, if you'll kick the conversation off. So Chapter 8 is really about the communication shift, right? It really talks about from directing to connecting. And a key part of this is listening. When you go back and you look at the chapter, you're going to see a lot around listening and investing in people. And so what I'd like for you all to do is to think about a leader who made you feel seen and heard and didn't make you feel like you were just being managed. What did they do that created that connection? Was there a time investment? What happened? And then how can you tell when someone is listening to understand versus listening to reply? This is a daily work in progress for me. I'll let you all
I
start.
have a lot of examples. I'm going to mention one because this is what's but I'm only going to mention one, okay? God. Oh, good, thank you, Sergio. All right, I'm done. No, I'm kidding. This was in particular to you know, my role in teaching. As far as having administrators, I've had 4 different principals in 4 years, teaching middle school. I would say one of them, I'm not gonna mention her name, but you know, she was one where I was like, wow, I can really do this for a while. You know, I feel supported. That was a leader. And how did they create that connection? And you mentioned it was just listening and not pretending to nod your head and then tell you, well, glad to hear that. Do this. Give me more work. It was, okay, how can we solve that? How can we figure out this issue? You know, whether it was a student, whether it was, you know, just the teaching experience, you know, pedagogy, things like that. And I felt, you know, and I left the meeting or I left the discussion feeling like, yeah, like that's, I'm moving forward. You know, she's moving forward with me. It's not like, okay, you did this, now go up on your own. And I do have to say the opposite. I've also felt the opposite, where you know I bring something up, and you know to another person, other people, other administrators, where it's kind of like okay, and then here's more work you have to do because the problem's with you. And I think you know, frankly, it's a matter of you know what's a supervisor, what's a manager, because a supervisor manager is going to make you feel like it's your problem. A leader is going to say, hey, let's follow this. This is our problem because we work at the same school, because we're in the same profession. And unfortunately, about half my time has been spent with leaders, half my time is spent with managers. And I'll leave that there. So yeah, it was more than 2 minutes, but that's okay. I'm the chair.
So I think for me, I'll name 2 just so it's local context. I think one of my first coaches when I came, and my tendency is to look for people that will coach me. That's always been my tendency. But I will say our first board president, Russo, was a very good foundation. In the sense that he could see beyond the polished man that showed up. And I say that not to make myself greater than what I am. But when you apply for a role superintendent, and you're taught, you go through this training, you're developing pedigree, you're supposed to be a certain type of leader. In the most benevolent way, and I'm going to follow that. Roy was a coach for me in places that I didn't even know I still need a coach. His signature statement was, if it makes sense, do it. He would always say that. And then one day, I think it was like the 19th time I was looking at that number, I just said, well, hold up. At what point does what makes sense to me, how are you checking me? Because to me, everything's gonna make sense. So how are you checking me? And then he said, and I've been waiting for you to answer that question. And so that was the first time, I think 6 months into the role, where I got really comfortable with my boss. I thought, this man is more interested in who I am as a man than the potential of what I wanted to do as the leader of the school district. So for me, that sold it that day. I still remember the day. The other person that isn't in this district, but who's always been a huge coach for me, has been the former retired superintendent from Southwest, Lloyd Burson. He's somebody that, very along the same thread, I would ask him, oh, if you don't mind, watch my videos from my board meetings. I need you to tell me what I think I know, where I'm missing an opportunity, and a lot of times he would give me, you know, he gives you that uplifting advice, but then he would say, well, Ed, you missed the mark on this, but let me tell you why, and he would always give me an example from his board. I had the same thing happen with Ed Gordon, obviously never who was, nothing like that, but here's what I learned, and here's the steps that I took. So we did that for the first 2 or 3 years, and then he retired. But those 2 people helped me ground myself in a way that I could also be a leader that I could execute on that for my team and then for everybody around this table. I've gone to all of you in different instances. And I have a tendency that if you teach me something, I'm going to write you a text. All of a sudden, you're going to get a text and say, hey, thank you for being on this board or something like that because you taught me something. That's just something that I believe in, letting people know. Because we want to do it when someone's gone or I like to do it in real time. I think that's been really important between the person who's nodding, can you hurry up, versus you're actually listening to. And the superintendent thinks that too, I think trustees think that too, right? I think that's what it's done for me.
Just a little short, I mean, just being on the board more recently, I think everyone that I've come through on the board has held, I guess in a sense, held them as a leader, not just management, because, not knowing anything, coming onto the board, I was able to get guidance from every single one, of everyone that's been on the board before, and, I guess that's just, that's where I appreciate everybody, because they saw me as a man, not knowing what to do, coming into the board, and then to actually give me the chance to prove myself. So that's where I feel everyone here has led me in a way.
Thank you for sharing that. And now for a governance connection.
So this connection comes from page 151 in the book, and it's on the connection side, not the direction side. So there are times when the board must collaborate with the superintendent. A lot of times you have to collaborate. And through the lens of Lone Star Governance, you collaborate on the goals, the goal progress measures, the superintendent evaluation. A lot of those are collaboration. Somebody owns it, somebody supports it, right? The board owns the goals in collaboration with the superintendent. That's an easy one. Listening. How does listening play into LSG? What have you learned over time?
I think, like you said, listening, you hear the input of everyone, and see what their train of thought is, and try and come to consensus, and that's
Yes, listening is very important because I have to understand what you're saying before I can really communicate effectively with you. And when you're on the dais, listening is tremendous because you have a huge audience. You have people online, you have people here. But how do I really know that I hear what you say? And we practice that in LSG, really hearing what the people were saying. And then, of course, there's that side by side. When we work side by side, you work side by side all the time with each other. You go out to campuses side by side in small numbers where it's not a quorum. You have tours, you have time together in your board meetings where it's side by side work. We all roll up our sleeves and get busy with the work. Empowering. During your board meetings, you empower the community by what you do. You're transparent. You provide accurate data, both academically and financially, so that you empower people to understand what you're doing and trust you. Understanding. Sometimes it's hard to understand some of the things that are talked about because it's complex information that comes out, especially like on the accountability system, but you have a fine team here that helps with that accountability system and understanding it. And that's part of LSG, understanding when to ask questions, maybe about the accountability system, how we ask those questions. Remember, we talked about technical, tactical, and strategic questioning. The board's lens is always through the strategic at the board meeting. Those technical questions and tactical questions, I know you guys send questions to the superintendent for clarity before a board meeting. You have your prior meetings before the board meeting, those properly called meetings to get more information and dive deeper into the information. So you have a lot of opportunity for understanding and asking those questions. Because if you don't if I don't, going back to LSG language, if I don't understand, I can't answer the question effectively. If I don't truly understand, and that comes, Dr. Covey, first to understand, and then be understood. And then the final one is your agenda. In our trainings, we always ask, in our orientation to the code at Region 20, we always ask, why don't you want to become a board member? Why do you want to be a trustee? And it's very interesting of those answers over time. And how the beginning answer for the meeting, the training, changes to the end. Makes sense without going into a lot of other detail around that? So all of these under the connecting are roles that you live every day through Lone Star Governance at your board meetings. Questions?
Thank you. Before we move on to our next chapter, in what ways does our board help the superintendent communicate with clarity and in unity? And in what ways might we accidentally create noise? This is for anyone.
I can answer. So communicate with clarity and unity, I think that's something we've all been working on because, you know, the community comes and talks to us, right? They need to feel comfortable speaking to us. And we need to remove as many, you know, or rather, we need to not create barriers, even imagined or real barriers to speaking because we're the representatives. And I think, you know, we help the superintendent by, you know, I say very often is don't make things complicated. Not everyone lives in education. It's a even the people living in education, we're still trying to figure it out. So just make it very simple, very easy for the community to understand, for our community to understand, not the community across the town or in another city or another state. What does our community want to know? What are their concerns? And I think just because there are 7 of us, right? There's one superintendent. The 7 of us, when we bring, you know, the concerns of the community and what they're saying to him, he's able to say, you know, that it's focused on these things because if there's questions, there's obviously either a misunderstanding or maybe an interest. And I think by letting him know that, then, you know, he's able to address those things as they come. And it's always going to be recurring. You know, every month there might be something depending on the agendas. But at the same time, you know, we need to be that bridge. That's how I see it. We're a bridge to the community and the district superintendent.
Anybody else? And what ways
And the
might we?
noise, yeah, I forgot the noise part, sorry. The noise part, I think, is asking too many technical questions, or too many, I don't like this, but that in the weeds questions that, frankly, they're not our purview. They need to be more big picture outcome questions, and we can create noise by responding to every question, every thought that comes to mind, so I'll leave that there.
Thank you. Anybody else before we move on? Appreciate that contribution. Next, I'd like to talk about the improvement shift. I'd like for you all to think of the best team you ever worked with. In that best team you thought about, what kinds of differences existed? Thinking about experiences, backgrounds, roles, perspectives. And why do you think diversity strengthened that team rather than slowing it down?
Sure. Not to cast a shadow on the team I'm working with now, but the best team I ever worked with was our board of management. We were set on a goal. We were brought on for a certain goal. We stuck to that goal, knowing full well that, you know, we had the blessings, so to speak, of the state, TA, and, you know, trying to get through difficulty, personnel-wise and school-wise, student-wise. But the fact that we were on with one primary goal, and that remained until it's dismantling 20 and 21. You know, not that anything, not that it hasn't remained the same, but it's been more personality issues, more personal agenda issues, people who, because we were put on, selected as a group, but insofar as being a trustee, you're elected. If you kicking up hands and kissing up babies and whatever, you can get on, and that shouldn't be the case. It should be what you present to the people, what you have done up to that point, where you're at, what it is, you have the interest of the kids in mind, going back to, you have the interest of the kids, everything else is on the back burner. It should be on the back burner. But again, it's the best thing I've ever worked on.
Thank you. Mr. Lopez, do you have anything you'd like to share?
You know, being a president for the neighborhood association, being a leader in the community, I've served on many teams. The one that I can think of right off the bat was actually a two-person team. A few years ago, I was selected to be on the Port Regional Planning Committee. And what that involved was looking at all the properties between the Edgewood, Thompson neighborhood, all the way up to Military Drive with a group of people. And deciding how the land was going to be used in those areas, and that includes areas that had homes, businesses, schools over it. And so the other person that was on my team in the Thompson area was our vice president. And we had different perspectives of how some of those areas should be used in land use. But it was collaborative in a way. We would debate back and forth about why some areas should be multi-business uses and why other places should be just residential. The one thing that I took out of that, working with our vice president, is that we were both focused on doing the right thing for the communities. To the point that when the city was holding classes for residents to come in and kind of state what their wishes were for these places, before the city would have those meetings, we held classes for our residents to come in so we could teach them what zoning was, what land use meant, so that when they went in, they knew exactly what they were asking for. And if you've ever worked with government, sometimes they're a little bit deceiving. They'll say, yeah, we'll give you this, but they won't tell you the fine print underneath that. So it was really important for us to educate the people in our neighborhoods, in our communities, about what they were asking for, and look at the fine print. So that was the perfect team because, again, we had different ideas, but the end game was to do what was right for the community and to make sure that we weren't destroying communities and having people thrown out of your communities. Essentially, what this would have done is if we would have put multi-units in certain neighborhoods, then homes would have been destroyed so that they could make space for certain land use.
Thank you. So you both described this notion of having aligned goals, right, for community, a purpose beyond the team, beyond your own self, right, to serve. As we think about diversity, even though we might have the same goal of any one given team, there still needs to be this appreciation for diversity. And I'm sure the journey wasn't always easy. I know, Frank, you were on that journey. Do you have any insight to share specifically with regard to the diversity on the team and how you were able to leverage diversity to create this sense of unity, to create ideal team?
go into college, right? You get your degree, and that's it. It's just a piece of paper. I don't mean to shoot it down, but that's what it is. It's a piece of paper. So, so, so all I'm trying to say is that this team, it's the board of managers, right? When we first started 10 years ago, but it's the big team. Let's call it the big team. It's LSG, it's TASB, Region 20. And then bring it on down from superintendent, you guys, right? And then teachers and us, right? And our kids. So that's the team that I see. I mean, it's a great team. And then the new board members, you know, we've been able to, it took us a while to get to where we are. I mean, especially Richard and I, we went through quite a few board members. and diversity, leadership style, or non-leadership style. So, but LSG kept us together. TASB, of course, helping us with everything that we need. Of course, there's always more, and all the way up to TEA, right? I'd like to think that we're all working towards the same goal, and I'm going to believe that. I'm going to be a believer of that.
So I'll build off what you just said. Keep believing that, because I think that is the truth. I'll keep mine short. I think the best teams I've been on are the teams that think about the three core values here. Back to the right over there. The best teams I've served on are the ones who value people, and within people, look at the words that are under them. These are people who work to communicate constantly and understand that sometimes what you think you know is not. Sometimes it's built on a misconception. They value relationships, and I'm not talking about the relationships where everything's hunky-dory. Here recently as last night, all 7 of you taught me something last night before we left. I walked away, I was walking this morning, and I was reflecting on last night. I think most of you know, my tendency is we take care of our business in private. But one thing you taught me last night is that part of listening is also, if we're moving beyond just hearing you, to listening. When you listen, you also need to listen that sometimes you are going to disagree. Some of us will say, you know what, we'll leave it there for now, we'll come back to it. But there does come a time when you have to, you know what, I hear you, I move to listening, I disagree, and based on facts, we need to have a tough conversation. That is something, you didn't teach me that those things need to happen. What you taught me is that you can have them in a very public setting and still be very respectful of the democracy that you're enacting every day. That's what I walked away with in the last few meetings. So I say that to the 7 of you, because that's a skill I will always walk away from. So again, the best teams are those who value people, those who value growth in an equitable way. It isn't, he got to grow yesterday, so when's my turn? What about me? What about me? No, you know to take turns, you empower, you collaborate, you build the ladder like Sergio was saying earlier. And then the last thing is the teams who understand that there is a goal. And sometimes the goal isn't A to Z all at once. Sometimes it's A to D, then you go to H, but then you get pushed back. Within your locus of control, I learned that, I didn't learn it, I've heard it before. Within your locus of control, you have to understand there are some things that are out of your purview. But that does not get to tell you that you did or you didn't grow. You just choose to not give it attention and move on and build on how much you're going. So to me, those are the best teams I've been on. The ones who value those 3 things: growth, people, and meeting the goal. That's important.
For the record, no, I'm just saying, Miss Martha Garcia arrived. All right, 6:12 p.m. Did you want to say something, sir? No?
So through the lens of LSG, what this whole chapter 9 reminds me of is when you ride a bicycle. Remember that? About the bicycle and the spokes? What do you remember about that one? Everything? Tell me more specific. Bicycle. Remember when the spokes are loosened, what happens to the bicycle? It'll fall apart. What else happens to the bicycle and the person riding it when the spokes loosen? They're gonna fall off eventually.
They're gonna fall off and get hurt.
So when we tighten those spokes, what happens to the integrity of the bicycle?
Strengthen it and make it stronger.
You strengthen it and make it stronger. When our spokes are tightened in our person, and we keep our integrity in check, and we admit when we kind of made a oops in a choice or an action, and we go in and have a conversation, a tough conversation with someone that we loosen the spokes on to increase our integrity. Because when we lose our integrity, we lose everything. Sometimes we can get a little oops and it can loosen, but it needs to be fixed quickly. So integrity is very, very important.
Sometimes those folks are just too bad and gotta replace them completely, and you like,
Outside the box.
Was there something about, being noisy, or that's the one that gets the attention, or am I making that up? Don't I remember something?
The squeaky wheel.
And we can't ignore it, right?
Thank you. And in honor of time, because we are a little over time, want to get us back on track. Our last is just a wrap-up slide. We have our Dr. James Hernandez as we think about governance. Want you just to kind of look at these questions here. I'm not going to read them all to you, but if you all will look through these questions, and if there's anything you feel compelled to share to close us out with regards to everything we've learned and your role as a board member, please share that out.
So I'm gonna start with my picture. Well, it's my old picture. We gotta use my new picture next time. My leadership has a picture, huh? Yeah, it's me. It's a long time ago. So one of the things, I guess maybe putting all these together, like Dr. H always mentions, is that we're not gonna be in these positions forever. Put the time on 2 minutes. I was gonna speak one, but I'll speak two. And my goal, y'all are just, and my goal, my goal for the board for doing these team of 8, and because we do more than we need to, we do quarterly, but we're only required to do one a year, is that anybody that comes through the Edgewood ISD board, the school board, they'll be able to be an officer, the president, vice president, secretary, like they'll be able to have those leadership positions. That's my goal. Because I don't think I don't have too many more years in me to be president, because it is stressful, and Martha as well. I mean, she knows how stressful and time consuming it is. And so that's my goal, is for anybody in here, when the time comes and when we have to transition, that everyone will feel not just confident, because you can be confident, but also have the skills to, run the board effectively and efficiently. And that's just my big picture goal in all this. So.
Thank you for sharing, sir.
And I want to add just one closing thought from the lens of LSG. I've been here since elected, not serving, went through Lone Star governance. The elected boards that were not elected members that were not serving, the board of managers, LSG, and through all of the transitions that happened with board members since then. I commend you for staying true to Lone Star governance. What I've heard tonight, that it's made a difference and that it continues to make a difference. So it's not easy, it's hard, but stay the course, because y'all are doing great things with Lone Star governance and keeping what students know and are able to do at the forefront. Just wanted to share that from my perspective.
And just one more thing that I wanted to add, that I know I said on the leadership that the board members were the ones that were leading, but it goes to Dr. H. and his team as well. You know, especially Mr. Williams, who's coaching me through, hey, certain things to do, saying, things to say, like, so move, or I call the question, stuff like that. He's kind of coaching me to that. But to your team as well, to answer the questions that I had no idea what I'm looking at. To get those answers right away. I appreciate your take for that. So thank you.
So what I'm hearing is Mr. Williams is gonna do the training. Finally, Mr. Salinas gets to sit. Watch. Go ahead.
I'll give you my book, start with my notes. Thank you. And as we wrap up, I challenge the board to continue to reflect on and think about what is one practice we may need to let go of to govern more effectively. That's always the hardest thing as we think about what else gets piled on our plate. What might we be able to let go? Thank you very much. The next time we meet, we will be working on our last few shifts and chapters. And I'll turn it over to Dr. H. Thank you. Oh, Dr. Diana.
Is it gonna stay for the question break? When he sits up, Amelia, first. Just a couple of quick minutes. Amelia's gonna get before.
Good.
Okay.
Okay, sorry. Good job.
3, 2.
All right, Dr. Fee.
I'm trying to figure that out.
Good evening. So the session today will be on our effective governance. I love the fact that good research is good research. I know that you all have the Region Service Center on our governance, but again, good research is.
Okay, use the mic, yes.
Good research is good research.
Yeah, we can hear you, but the thing doesn't pick us.
Thank you. So, I took a couple of notes as you all were speaking, and the beauty about it, I know great minds think alike. It is a disclosure, I did not work with the Region Service Center, but it's just good work, and you'll see the alignment, because good governance is good governance. So I love the fact that you all are deep learners. As board trustees, you are entrusted with the future of your community. So the beliefs, the values, principles are in your hands. So now as a trustee, just being here, when we look at effective board governance and when we look at the repertoire of school board districts that have been successful, there's a common denominator, and it's them understanding their role, their responsibility as an entrusted official. We look at oversight. I wanted to mention, while I know you will talk briefly about the importance of understanding our role and responsibility for that board trustees and as a superintendent, but it's that support that you give Dr. H, because at the end of the day, he's tasked with bringing those goals that you have put forward into fruition. And that cannot be done if you all do not work cohesively, collaboratively, and you have unified. And you all mentioned it earlier, and that's true. Also, you all mentioned about the fact that it's not easy. No, it's not easy. Success is not easy. If success were easy, everybody would be successful. Success is the outcome of methodological preparation. What you put in today, you're going to reap tomorrow. So I love the fact that you are already engaged in being deep learners, lifelong learners. And also you all mentioned the fact that you all come from various backgrounds, but it's these various backgrounds that give you all this unmatched advantage. Mr. Espinosa, you mentioned you were in accounting? So, as a previous educator, if we're looking at budgets, we have that unmatched advantage to be able to have the person that knows numbers guide us. And then we have an educator that if we're possibly moving forward to adopt a curriculum that we can rely on, but it's this unmatched advantage that gives you all a perfect seat at the table to possibly put forward the policy or initiative that will possibly have the most positive effect on your students, on your teachers, on your families, and on your overall community. So I love that. So with that said, our session today will be on the power of effective governance. Really quick, going over our time together. So if you all recall from last time, we went over the team self-assessment. If anything, there was kind of like a minor outlier on the whole assessment, but what we found was that you all wanted a little bit more opportunities to see how is it that you can engage your community. So we'll briefly talk on that. We'll move on to effective governance. Specifically on effective governance, we'll talk about the governance culture, the dignity. You all mentioned it earlier. Symbiosis, our why, teamwork, trust. Then we'll move on to the second pillar. So we'll be talking about two pillars of effective governance. Then we'll move on to governance mindset, being focally driven. That's strategically. You all mentioned it earlier. As board trustee, you gotta be strategic about what you do. Being a lifelong learner, you all be learners just being here, you are building your capacity to now be at the seat, to be possibly making the most positive decisions for the district. An ambassador. As every time I go and partner with a school district, I go and I would look at every detail that I can find on you all on the internet. So I'll go to YouTube and watch you all's meetings. So we'll be talking a little bit about the importance of being an ambassador and how is it that we can kind of get a different perspective to see what we as the public see of you all, so you can be kind of mindful of that and connect that to being an effective board trustee. And then we'll close it with any, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, we'll answer those. But with that said, we'll get it going. As mentioned earlier, the team self-assessment, what we got from it's you all understand and trust each other that you're here for what's in the best interest of students. So that's amazing. But you also understand that now that that's there, how is it that we can engage the community? So that's what we're going to be talking about. We'll have a minor component on engaging the community. So before we get to our host session, regarding this question, it's a very profound question, vital question if you think about it. So, what legacy do you want to leave as a board? I know you all talked about legacy. I love the fact that you all mentioned systems and structures to success. It's not accidental. And great leaders. If we have leaders, doesn't mean that you're a great leader, but great leaders are those that are able to put forward systems and structures in place that with or without them, anybody that comes into Edgewood will know this is the way that we do things here at Edgewood. And the beauty about Edgewood is that advocacy runs in your DNA. So we gotta make sure that whoever comes on board that is not familiar with the history of Edgewood knows and understands this is the way we do things. So if board president Dr. Hernandez decides not to continue, hey, he can leave along with you all systems and structures in place so whoever comes on board understands that that's the way that we do things. So with that said, what legacy do you want to leave as a board? What do you want your community to remember? What do you think your community will be saying about you? Not everybody at the same time.
Oh, is it an actual?
Yes.
So, again, going back to day one, which was about 10 years ago, for the first, let's say, 4 years, all we did was create the foundation. So that strong foundation is going to help do everything else with the help of newer board members, right, and future board members. So I'd like to believe that they're going to honor that structure, that system. Of course, there's always change. But you mentioned diversity, right? We have that here. But we're using that diversity for the common goal, though, for good.
There you go.
Right? So it's like having knowledge. It's knowledge. It's potential knowledge, right? Because if you don't use it, same thing with diversity, right? We have to be able to use it in the right way. So that's where I rely on our board president, our superintendent, the rest of us. You know, I'm not afraid to go to Mr. Lopez and ask him for his advice or his opinion, or Mr. Delgado, you know, or any board member.
Thank you for sharing that. And it actually reminds me of that question that was asked by you all, assistant superintendent on kind of recollecting that team, that ideal team that you have been part of, and what made it the ideal team. As you all were speaking, I think about when I was a superintendent, I was like, the ideal team for me was that team where I had members within my group that complemented my weaknesses. Often as leaders, we think a leader doesn't know it all. A leader needs to be humble. And often there's kind of this misconception of leaders that you should know it all, that it should be your way or the highway because you're the one representing the district. But no, it's about understanding the value of what people bring to the table that gives you all this unmatched advantage. It's about giving them a voice at the table, so that goes back to the research by Dr. Kurt Lewin, the importance of mutual engagement and shared diagnosis. That makes it even better. The decision will probably increase its possibility of being a successful initiative or policy when you give everybody a seat at the table. Mutual engagement, shared diagnosis, and then complementing yourself with people that probably will cover your weaknesses. So when I think about my team, I think about that team where I had an expert in curriculum. The curriculum wasn't my forte. You want to share something, Dr. Evans?
No, I was just enjoying it.
Anybody else on legacy? You think about the legacy, what is it that you want to leave as a board? I know that Mr. Espinosa kind of honed in on the importance of leaving a foundation. If you think about it, metaphorically speaking, there's a hurricane and a tree might lose its limbs, branches, but the foundation, the trunk stays the core. That's the importance of having a strong
I
foundation.
will mention something. I mean, this is something that I do mention. Everything I think of, I'm pretty open about. The legacy I want for Edgewood is for us to be stayed and nationally recognized again for good things again. Because you had mentioned our history. That's what I would like. I would like for us to make statewide change, nationwide change, and for us to be, have more reach than just Edgewood. I think that's been something that I've been trying to work on, as long as, I've been here is, of course, Edgewood is the 16 square miles, but, we need to learn as a district and as a community that our impact can be much greater than it is now. I don't know what that looks like yet, but, I think we're working towards it slowly, some positive things. So that's my thing.
Thank you for sharing, and just, go ahead. That's good.
I want to say that this is the foundation because when we got here, there was nothing. We had to start over again. And it was about cleaning a lot of stuff that was there that we didn't need. But I feel that, okay, we built a foundation, but we became a very flexible board. Because whether it was COVID, whether it was, we took action that shocked the people, but it was like, no, you gotta respect us now. It was like, oh my God, because parece que no estamos solitos, we're not gonna do anything, but no, that's enough of that. And then just digging deep and changing things. And I am so proud because yesterday was the first time that, in a long time, that I felt that we were a team because these guys felt comfortable speaking up. And it wasn't aggressive nor anything, it was just like they said, the Spurs, they support each other, and I felt that's how it happened yesterday, and that's what I'm proud of. And it just shows that we made them feel comfortable so that they could speak and give them their space, because we all contribute something.
Love it. And indeed, yes, I saw the professionalism, but it goes back to that notion of trust, which we'll be covering, the importance of trusting that regardless of your ideological differences, you all know and understand that you're here for what's in the best interest of students, teachers, families, and your community. So with that said, when we look at the effective boards that I was talking about earlier, there's a common denominator, and it's them understanding what is oversight. Oversight is just kind of a word that covers so many domains. But specifically, when we look at effective governance, it's you all and board trustees understanding. If you look at the center pillar, the governance culture, dignity, that's dignity is often confused with respect. Respect is something that you have to earn. Dignity is something that you are born with. And how that goes hand in hand, and you all touched it earlier on communication. And that goes hand in hand, and I'm going to kind of explain as to how often when we look at dignity or leading with dignity for leaders, that's if you follow Dr. Donna Hicks over at Harvard, she mentions, she's kind of a little bit about Dr. Donna Hicks. She worked with Archbishop Tutu Ireland, who worked with Nelson Mandela in the movement of apartheid. And she found through her studies of cultures is that when people feel that their dignity, their self-worth has been violated, from minimal things such as, let's say you're speaking to me and I'm crossing my arms, I'm showing you, probably unconsciously, that I don't care about what you say. Or if you say something and I roll my eyes, that I don't care. So just that simple gesture will create a conflict. And that can create conflicts, again, that notion of our self-worth being violated from differences between you and I to differences that will cause war. So it's the fact that people feel that their dignity has been violated. Symbiosis is that energy that say, iba muy bien. And when I came here, and even as seeing you all's previous board meetings, there is this energy, and I walk in, probably it's something that you have to be there. It's very difficult to love somebody. You have to be there, and you create this kind of environment which is inviting. It's not intimidating, and it's the aura that you guys are radiating. So there has to be that symbiosis, that synergy within the culture that you are trying to radiate. Important is you all understand what is your why, because everybody has a why. Very cliche. That's your moral important. The most important thing of what you do. And I have yet to sit with any board member who says, I don't care about students. Regardless, because I've been in far West Texas, East Texas and Tyler, deep South Texas, and everybody cares about students. And it takes, well, we care about students. We might have ideological differences, but how can we then come to the table to make sure that we are advocating for students, teachers, families, and the community? It takes teamwork. Because you all know that it's not going to work if we're all moving in different directions. The bus, the way that I want you all to think about this is there's a bus that's moving that's not stopping. That's time. Time stops for nobody. I'm originally from Mexico, so we have this belief that when we are born, we board this train whose destination is, it sounds very dark, but whose destination is death. So what you do from here to there is within your power. Because that train ain't stopping. It's time. So what you all do is within your, like for students, that's within your power. That's the beauty about local governance. But you cannot do that if everybody's moving in different directions. The bus is not going to move. So when we move in the right direction, we might have a flat tire, meaning probably we get a 7-0 vote, but the bus is still moving. Kind of see it that way, but it takes teamwork. And more importantly, trust, and we'll kind of break it down. Trust is like the game changer. Change does happen at the speed of trust. If there's trust, like I saw it yesterday, you all, it's kind of part of your meeting. There's a trust to be able to voice what you believe. Because at the end of the day, it is your community that entrusted you all, everybody, to represent what's in the best interest for them, as their values and their beliefs. Then we're going to move on to the importance, which is something you all have covered deeply with Lone Star Governance on governance mindset. Interconnectedness. Every decision that you make is interconnected. It affects everything. It's a system. Since you all as board trustees understanding that whatever policy or initiative you put forward will have either a positive or negative effect. Now the challenge is, how can we work together as a teamwork to put forward a policy or initiative that possibly will have the most positive effect? It's not going to be perfect. Perfect doesn't exist. But how can we then put policies forward that will have the most positive effect on all our students, teachers, families, and the community? Focally driven. That's strategically driven. Every decision that you make has to be, like, you got to be strategic about it. Because it's real life that you guys are affecting. You all are life changers. It sounds very cliche or very corny. But in reality, you all are life changers. Like the policies you all put forward have real effects. I can tell for me was I'm a product of effective board governance. And really quick, my story, pretty quick, is I'm from South Texas. Right now, that policy wouldn't cut it, but I recall it was after soccer practice, I was sitting down, I'm talking to the son of one of our board members, and he's visiting a couple of colleges. He's asking, hey, where are you going to go to college? I'm like, I'm not going to go to college, I'm going to go back to Mexico. He was like, what do you mean? I have not visited any colleges. I'm not part of student council. I'm not part of anything, so they don't take us. Well, this friend of mine did a conversation, mentioned to his father, the board trustee. Father then calls superintendent, says, hey, what are we doing about our emerging bilingual? Because when we look at all these 18 subgroups, if you're familiar with Domain 3, we have all these subgroups. There's 4 major subgroups. Like, you have to pay attention. Well, that's Mauro. I was an emerging bilingual, and what was it, English language learner back in ELL? Emerging bilingual. I was part of SPED, so I was dyslexic, right? I would fall under SPED. I was economically disadvantaged, and I was a continuously mobile student. So when they say you don't make a difference, you do. You do make a difference. So long story short is that superintendent calls the principal, okay, we have these funds, get all these emerging bilinguals. Today we didn't cut it, but they called everybody to the learning center. Estamos ahí, I'm like, hey, algo está raro aquí. O sea, todos nos parecemos, todos somos como, todos hablamos español. It was all the emerging bilingual, all the economically disadvantaged, and they bused us to the local colleges and universities. For me, that was a game changer because when I went there was this now very famous rock band, Spanish rock band, Elefante. If anybody has heard Elefante, Elefante was playing. So we were there, we were visiting Elefante's playing, and I'm asking the tour guide, I'm like, so es gratis? ¿Cuánto pagas? Well, es gratis. Free. Y luego nos llevaron al center where you can go and do weights or physical fitness, and it's free. You just have to have the college ID. So for me, it was a culture shock in a positive way. So you're thinking, okay, listen, I want this. I went back, I'm like, I want to go to college. And that's through policies. So it was not free, but it's policies that you all put forward that now I have the opportunity to come and partner with you all. So whenever you are asked either at HEB or your local grocery store, what do you do for a living? You guys are life changers. Because it's through effective board governance that I'm now on this side, getting able to partner with you all to make sure that more Maurus in Edgewood have those same extensive tailored academic opportunities, because it's about all students, not just the kids of the teachers or the principals or the superintendent. It's about everybody walking Edgewood. So that's that. And last week's ambassador, and I will talk a little bit about how, as a board trustee, you are in a perfect position to be able to tell the story of what's going on great at Edgewood. With that said, our first focus will be on our why. The why would actually spark you to run for board. Because we know that you all get paid millions of dollars. And you guys take so many vacations with all that money.
Pay doubles every year.
You're paid doubles every year. Because that's what the community thinks. But this is actually something that sparked you to run to be here. Does anybody want to share what sparked you to run for board?
Sergio, go.
Mr. Delgado?
Who sparked you?
So I was approached at a barbecue, like, to not even to run. If I knew anyone that wanted to run, my sister goes, "Hey, go do it." I was like, "Okay." So I was like, "Hey, I'll run, right?" And halfway through it, I was like, "I don't want to do it after all. Don't vote for me, please don't." And I still won. So, but I'm gonna be a man about it, and I won. So I'm gonna make, try to do my best to try to make the best situation of it. And I stepped on the board, and I enjoyed it. I've definitely learned from it. I've learned from things I was told, from things that I see now that are not completely accurate. Very fictitious lies in a sense. So to see it for myself, and I mean, for instance, I was one for myself to say, oh man, why they closing one of the schools? Like, you know, they have money, they have all that. You know, they're just doing it to do it, to actually get in there and actually see the numbers, see the reason why. It makes complete sense. If people would just sit down for a second, all this information is available to see. They will sit down just for a second and see why things are being done the way they are, just because there's a major reason behind it. We can't continue to facilitate a school for just low enrollment. You know, we gotta, and we don't have the teachers to fill the slots. So it makes sense to close the school, put those teachers where we need them, and just help the kids out. It makes sense. So that's my story.
When board trustees run for office, there's always kind of this notion out there, oh, they have an agenda. Everybody has an agenda. Everybody has an agenda. But once you come to the table, you know that in order for you to move, whatever agenda it takes, a simple majority, which was not put forward by TA or Task B, something that we have adopted from the English continent. And the Texas courts and the legislature have continued to upheld those ideals. So going back, it's getting here, and I mentioned it earlier to Dr. Age. Now you're here at the table. You gotta make sure that you have a seat at the table, because if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. So if they elected me to have more Maoris receive extensive senior academic opportunities, and I come here because they never give Hispanics opportunities, and I'm gonna be, well, guess what? I'm only one vote. So if I wanna have a seat at the table, I need to learn to be collaboratively with my team to try to together move the bus. So that's important, but it goes back to the why. I know you mentioned the system. Make it a better system. These students, maybe addressing from out, maybe the cheerleading team, but once you come here, you understand that, yeah, you gotta understand, you gotta work together. Not united. It's not like a yes sir, no. It's always, yeah, I would tell my team. When we go to we had this, that's the room where the president goes and makes executive sessions. Anybody? There's a room where the U.S. president goes and makes executive sessions. The Oval Office. Situation room. So we had a situation room. Yo le decía a would tell my team. And a situation room, nos hacemos ganas. Like, I don't expect you to be a yes, Dr. Yes, no. I made all la contra. Tell me why. So if something's not working, I don't want you to tell me why. Tell me what are we gonna do to fix it. But once we come out unified. Unified. Because it's a we, and you mentioned it earlier, I'm constantly Dr. Hernandez, the we mentality. We often think, oh, it's an I. No, it's not an I. You stopped at HEB and you're asked, no, it's a we mentality. It's we, the board, will find out what is it that's going on, and we'll inform Dr. A so he can then talk to whoever he needs to talk to, and they will call you. It's not, I will fix it. Oh, he didn't start the soccer team. Oh, don't worry, I'm gonna call Dr. A. He's gonna know. It's a we. So it's kind of changing that mindset, and we'll talk a little bit more about it. But that's the importance of understanding your why, because that's always gonna, when you think that things are moving the way that you believe, you gotta go back to why you're doing what you're doing. If it's for hours, if it's for whatever it is, it's a better system, think back about it. Because that's gonna keep you fueled to continue moving.
Can I mention, because I know there's a few of us that we've been on the board more than one term. And for me, my why has changed, right? And if y'all do choose to run again, maybe your why would be different because you know more, right? And so I think that there's also that opportunity that, hey, initially, like Mr. Delgado mentioned, I thought it was this is why, because someone asked me, and that was my same situation the first time. Someone asked me, hey, you got a degree, you can do it, whatever. Okay, sure. But then the second time I ran, I said, it was actually to pursue leadership and to kind of develop my way that way, to learn how to lead a board and a district. Then there's, of course, this next time will be another reason to leave a legacy. That's my thing. But I think it's also important to recognize that, hey, you might come on, your first term or your first, experience for one reason, and then your why is totally different by the time you're at the end.
Very good. And that's an outcome or consequence of you all being deep learners, not coming in with a big ego saying, I know it all. No, as you come onto the table and say you are a deep learner, lifelong learner.
Can I say something? You just said something a while ago that was interesting when you said you have an agenda. And so I watched a podcast the other day, and they're talking about me, and they said that I want on board because I have an agenda because I want to use it as a stepping stone. I'm not gonna say that I don't have an agenda, but what I will say is I'm here now, and I want to give it 110%. And I want to make sure that I'll leave this position, this place, in a better place, regardless of what my agenda is.
Love it. Thank you. And it goes back to this belief, us like, how I like Latinos or we're from Mexico. So we have this belief, pero lo han inculcado, like it's always been kind of drilled into our heads. Regardless of what you do it to the best of your ability, because that says a lot about who you are. I know you mentioned Mr. Delgado that you can run and do it that you want, but now you're here, do it to the best of your ability. You want a better system, like do it to the best of your ability, so that whomever comes on board finds it easier. And you mentioned earlier the ladder that you didn't, that possibly no one was there. That's reality. That's true. But I love the mindset, because we have other people who think, okay, nobody helped me, so I did on my own, and they should also do it. No, it's that mindset that closes doors for other individuals. It's about, hey, you made it. How can you make it easier for others than to get to where you're at? And it goes back to that, leaving a system better than where you entered. Thank you, Barry. But nothing happens without teamwork. That's what we have to. Nothing happens without teamwork. We have to work cohesively, collaboratively, and unified. Not united. I want to make sure we distinguish. United side, yes. No. We go to executive, but once we come out, it's Edgewood ISD. Trust. I love this one because the unmatched advantage that you all have as Americans, that we all have as Americans, is the fact that when we look at the history of our amazing country, it's through trust that we have been able to put forward thriving systems. If we look at the bicameral system, we had our founding fathers who some wanted representation based on two per state and others wanted representation based on population. But they all trusted that they wanted, regardless of their political ideological differences, they wanted what was best for this new country. So they came to the table and they made it work, and now we have the bicameral system as we speak. As I speak, it's still there. When we look at the Camp David Accords, Maryland, it was because of trust. It was a trust of the fact that Anwar Sadat and Begin, while they had major differences, while both felt that they had their dignity had been violated, they both knew and understood that they wanted what was best for their nations. So they came to the table. And now you follow that story, but it's actually Jimmy Carter who asked his secretary to give him the names of the grandkids of both. So he said, we're doing this not for you, not for I. And somebody mentioned it's not about me, it's about what we do for the people. Yes. So that was like a game changer. It goes back to trust. That regardless, it was Israel, it was Egypt, they both understood and trusted that while they had differences, they wanted what was going to be in the best interest of the future for their country. So it was the Camp David Accords. So that's trust. Trust is very difficult to get. And you all mentioned it, when they came on board, we wouldn't, but now it's there. But I also want you to understand that once you lose it, once you break it, it's very difficult to get. Can you get it back? Yes, you can. But it's very difficult. It's very elusive. Change happens at the speed of trust. I see here and challenge me on it. Possibly solutions that are initiatives, or policies that are put forward by you all, that you have ideas. it's easier to get them through because of the fact that regardless of where it's coming from, you all trust that you want what's in the best interest of the district. So usually you don't hash it out. I've actually worked with districts, school boards who, it's like 3-3-1, or it's tough because there is no trust. So so nothing's winning. Who's hurting? Students. Students are hurting. So what is your why? As I mentioned last time I was here, as I looked at, I love those celebrations. I know that Dr. A starts his presentation with everything that's going on, the beauty's happening in the district. These are outcomes of what you all put forward in collaboration with Dr. H. And I'm going to kind of give you a little bit. Right now, as I was looking at the superintendent turnover, and Dr. Hernandez, you know this, we covered it a couple times. It's like 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, because right now, nobody wants to get the superintendent job because it's about working with 7 individuals. When I was deputy, I'd rather work with my superintendent. I only had one boss. My boss, the superintendent, had to work with 7. And I'm going to tell you, when I was there, we went through 5 superintendents in 2 years. That's reality. 5. So, I know you all have a very good relationship with Dr. H. I can see the synergy, the symbiosis. Nothing gets done without you all's collaboration and vice versa. The trust that you know that whatever he puts forward as a manager of the district is in the best interest of students, teachers, families, and the community. He helps your visions come into fruition of the district. So I love the fact that you guys are working, but understand that out there it's hard. And we've seen it when we are tasked with helping districts get new superintendents. It takes some time. I recall when we looked at the longitudinal data, we had like 70 people applying for right now. And that includes major districts where like the pay is good. It's really hard. It's really hard to work with 7 bosses. So I commend you all for what you're doing. Success is not accidental. When we look at the governance mindset, it's about being locally driven, being a lifelong learner, that's what we're doing right now, and being an ambassador. Locally driven, that you all understand your role to govern, not to administer. As we talked about, this is the gentleman that you all selected to run and manage the district. You provide oversight. And you have been doing it because I know I heard earlier with LSG, the board goals that you all have, the goals you all have moved forward are being progress. You look at, you monitor progress, are we moving in the right direction, are we not? And then if you need to go, you adjust. So you are already speaking effective board governance. You guys are on the right track to move this district where it needs to be. Governance necessitates an understanding of board systemic perspectives, and the responsibilities are addressed with a focus on achieving the board's why, like the most important thing, students, teachers, strategic goals, and intended outcomes. That's you being strategic on what you do, and that goes hand in hand with what you guys are doing with Lone Star governance. Lifelong learners. We don't know it all, and often I've actually partnered with school board trustees who says, oh, I was not a teacher, so I'm not going to give my opinion on the curriculum that we're planning to adopt. I'm going to leave it to Dr. Hernandez. He was an educator, so he knows. But as a trustee, you are entrusted with the future of your community. So if you do not know curriculum, you bear the responsibility to go and find out because they are trusting you. So that's you all being a lifelong learner. Great and effective trustees conduct thorough research. You all do your homework. Effective school board governance relies on accurate, timely data. It's not about feelings. It's about what does the data say? Then how do we adjust? And when data is moving in the right direction, it's not an opportunity to panic, but rather it's an opportunity to then plan for a solution. And furthermore, the effectiveness of governance lies in understanding its duty to recognize and comprehend every issue related to your students, teachers, family term, and that's kind of, Mr. Delgado, like, I don't know, but I'm gonna learn, because they're entrusting me with the future of it, so I love that. Yes.
You know, board members, I want to add into that discussion. The other reason why I think things work with regards to, I'm being real specific about the learning piece. The diversity that you bring as a trustee, the seven of you, in your individual capacity as a group, thinking of all the members who've been on the board and their feedback, and you're allowing yourself and being vulnerable to say, I don't understand, but you work alongside them, and they're all looking down right now, but they're gonna look up when I say this, with the men and women on that team over there. There's some missing. You just gave an accolade to Mr. Williams in an area that you felt that you needed to grow on. But, you know, we have shop talk, and we always talk, if we're talking finances, we're always thinking about Frank. Frank's been our resident accountant. Each one of you brings that perspective, and part of our conversations is make sure you interface with, if it's a neighborhood conversation, if it's whatever the topic is, we know who the person is we direct ourselves to, because we may understand things within the context of our work. We weren't necessarily always out in the same field where you were. And I think that effective and quality boards are those that work alongside the cabinet, the superintendent and his or her cabinet, because again, we're gonna learn from each other, you're gonna add value, you're gonna challenge too. That's part of your role too, is to challenge. And there have been times when you challenge things. And I appreciate my team because through all that, they have their independent relationships with you. And you get to see a lot of boards. It is not the case that I've been on cabinets as a chief or an assistant super. I could not talk to the board unless my super allowed it. I had to get the look, you can go talk to me. And I knew where the line was. And guys, that is something that's been, we were also socialized that way. Since I was in Dallas, Raleigh, all the districts I've been in. Until the suit says you can talk to them, we do not talk to them. Okay?
Exactly.
It is, but that's not something I think goes into the venue from everybody here. That's not how we lead. That is not vulnerability. We lose the opportunity to learn from each other. We lose the opportunity to challenge each other. And again, that would be me saying, look, whether you were a manager with the city, if you were, right now you're a student, you're a police officer, each one of you, whether you're out in the community, the stories that you're sharing with us, the challenges that sometimes you don't say a lot, but when you say something, it carries a huge weight. And so those are important to making this team effective as a governance and as a governance body.
I was going to mention something because I also want to mention, because you had said something about the, you know, how the cabinet, the superintendent's cabinet are socializing with that. So almost unlearning, because from my understanding from our conversations, that was the training. You don't talk to certain people. That was official, you know, you go through these processes, you go through superintendent training or, you know, administrator training, and that's what they're, but now it's different, right? We have to change, the system also has to change, because the people.
Adapt with agility.
Yes, now the system is slower, it's slower, but at the same time, we have to, like, we challenge each other. Sorry, I was kind of relaxing, but when we were, you know, we challenge each other, but I think we also need to challenge those systems that are in place because they don't always work for everybody. And so I'm gonna leave that there because it's not just the people, it's also the systems that can work against us as well. So.
And it was perfectly stated by Dr. Hernandez. When we think about being a live learning, it's about think about building your capacity to be the best trustee that you can be. To have a seat at the table. I want to be very transparent about this, and because a lot of people confuse this. Okay, now I know accountability, and I'm going to ask the questions as a gotcha. It's not about a gotcha. It's about building your capacity to then ask the right questions to be able to guide the district. If something's not working, for example, let's say we're moving to adopt a curriculum. If you're familiar with trainings on curriculum, there's a system in Texas, the instructional materials review and approval, which basically tells you if that curriculum is a vetted curriculum. Vetted, is it aligned to the TEKS? The TEKS is what students are going to be able to do by the end of the day or at the end of the year. How are we going to test rate? At the end of the year, we'll start. And it's you having that capacity not to ask and put him on the, not to put him on the spot as a gotcha. No, it's about, with fidelity, wanting to do what's in the best interest of the district. So you can ask, okay, you're moving forward, putting forward that recommendation. Is in that, yes, perfect. It's about building your capacity to ask the right questions, not gotcha questions, the right questions to move. Because this is all educated. If we don't succeed, the district doesn't succeed. Students hurt. So I just want to kind of disclaimer, when you become a lifelong learner, then you're in a position to ask the right questions. Board operating procedures and code of ethics. It's imperative to know this as a board trustee. Something that I want to kind of point out is the importance of having board operating procedures and understanding that that's like your constitution. That's the district's constitution. These are your bylaws. And what I have found, and this is 80% of school boards will adopt board operating procedures, and then they'll file it. Y se olvidaron. And they don't understand operating procedures such as how long can you also, I know y'all mentioned time minutes. Mr. Egalio holding board president. Yes, as funny as it might sound, that's on your board operating procedures. If we get somebody over here, that's on your board operating procedures. Like that's your living document. And if you don't honor your living document, then you create chaos. Then there's this ambiguity. How do we do things that get through? I want to work for board, but no, and it goes back to don't start governance. Great leaders are those that are able to put forward systems and structures that with or without them, the district moves, or the organization continues moving in the right direction. So that's the importance of, and also the code of ethics. And we're going to lean into it on your role as an ambassador. Everybody's watching what you're doing. As I was watching you all's meetings, I'm seeing everything. So you poke your nose out at the whole world is seeing you poke your nose. Kidding, but yes, they see. We're humans. We're humans. Somebody mentioned the biases that we come as humans. We come with biases, and we have to take our perspective. So everything you do is being watched. You're like the fish on the fish bowl. You're a board member 24/7. You go to HEB, guess what? You're still board trustee. Like you're. So while you want to act as a regular citizen, and no, you're in the eyes of your constituents, you are a board member 24/7. We'll talk a little bit about it. Anybody want to add anything on the importance of board operating procedures?
I want to mention something, because it's something I do try to do, and they do hold me accountable, is that, you know, just like Martha was, and I'm currently the president, like, I'm tied to these as well. Like, whenever we all have our 2 minutes, I do my best to stay within that 2 minutes as well.
I mean, it's your responsibility as a board president.
It is, no pressure, no pressure. But I mean, it is, and I shouldn't be exempt, we're not exempt from doing those things. But yeah, the other thing was, and that we have to follow them consistently, not just when it's convenient, like when it kind of goes in our favor, right? I think we had discussed that the other day, like, we don't just bring up the rules when all of a sudden, you know, I want more time or I want less time. It has to be consistent. So, and consistency is something I struggle with as well, but they hold me accountable.
And thank you for mentioning that, but it goes back to success is very difficult. Success is tough. That's why not everybody's successful. School board successful, I'm successful. Whatever you want, like it's hard. Success is not accidental. So it's about committing to adopting your constitution, your board operating procedures. But key to being successful is not the commitment that you have adopted, and you're gonna see it as a living document. The key will be in the consistency, adhering to it. And not everybody does that. I can tell you 100% of you all, trustees around the state of Texas, commit to it because you adopt it. Regardless if you commit by law or because you commit by you know consistently.
So, this whole time today with Team of 8 training, I've said this before when we talk, but the emotional part of all this, that's what really throws a wrench or a curveball in everything. And I think that's why you miss that consistency or you don't do it. Same thing with board operating procedures, where because your emotions are going and you're on fire. You're like that shark, you know, the eyes close and then you're in a different state of mind. You're almost, but that's what we always, I think we need to just always remember that. Somebody has to ground us, right? To say, all right, your emotions are high right now. But we have to have a signal like, you know, caw, you know. Just saying.
Yeah, it sounds funny, but it can be. I know that earlier, Mr. Legado, you were holding him accountable. But it goes back to that, and yes, emotions are high because we care. We care about what we do. As board trustees, yes, if you didn't have any emotions, no, you're humans. It has a direct impact, and you see how it's gonna impact possibly the students, the teachers, the families, yes. But it's always good to think amongst you all, and it goes back to what we talked about, trust. Having that trust, 'cause I can tell you, not everybody does that. Like, but I can see that you have the trust that, hey, it's Vince, and he's not gonna take it personal. He's gonna take it personal. And that's good because you don't know
I love it.
I love it.
And I say that too, I'm like, if you don't stop me, I'm gonna speak up.
Yes, because then they'll say, well, he had a, 10 extra seconds or 10 extra minutes. The vision of Edgewood Ivy, preparing students for success in an ever-changing world. I love this because you see what's going on right now. It's an ever-changing, ever-evolving private and public sectors. Now, when you see the portrait of your graduates, what do you see? What are you producing? And when you think about the seniors, what are you producing?
Scholars.
Scholars?
In my mind.
Like we saw the young lady last night, Brooklyn. Oh, sorry, I was acting like you were here. The young lady from, oh, okay.
I watched
The young lady from Kennedy, that we highlighted, not the, what is it, the other young person. Brooklyn, yes. That's, who was there at Kennedy? You were there at Kennedy when we had lunch, the luncheon. Very pointed, and a lot of what she talks about is, I've learned to think for myself. Now, I want you to understand, this young lady, raised in a single parent home, her dad just passed away recently. She's got a very interesting story. But what she's repetitive about is, I've learned to think for myself, and in the same breath will tell you, but here's what I'm leaving high school not knowing. I don't know how to pay bills. I don't know how to manage my money. Remember that? I don't know financial literacy. I don't know any of that. And so I'm learning to think for myself, but then how am I going to go get my own place and pay bills? I don't know any of that. And I thought that was so pointed that she said, so I asked her later, well, tell me more about that. She said, I'm a pretty book smart kid. But book smart kids don't always make it. That's profound for a high school senior to realize that. So she's caught up right now in financial literacy, which we talk about it all the time. It's now in the curriculum.
Thank you.
Like this.
Okay, thanks,
So
y'all.
yes, it's something we're looking at. But I love that. This is why the client, you use the word, because I always tell the kids, you're the client. This is why it's important for the client to speak up and for us to really listen.
So I love the fact that you mentioned creating thinkers. Again, disclaimer, Mexico. So we were at Easter gathering, and it's a funny, so it's a personal story. Our story. So our grandmother celebrated their 50th anniversary, and one of the educated tias asked Grandma, in front of everybody, so ¿cómo le hiciste? How did you do to be 50 years together? Kind of trying to make an example of what we as younger marrieds need to do. And one of the thinkers, tias, was like, pues se quedó callada. Se quedó callada. And she took it. Because in our culture, muchas veces it would be frowned upon to voice. So when Dr. H mentions thinkers, we kind of have this misconception, oh, the new students or graduates, they don't respect anybody. But no, it's just that they will question everything because they're not going to take it. I recall that, God forbid, a teacher called home, que Mauro se portó mal, that I misbehaved because my dad was not going to call the teacher and find out I was gonna get it at home. Right or wrong, I was gonna get it at home. Today, it's like students are now critical thinkers. When they go out there, they're not gonna take a job for $7.25. Because we live in a capitalist society that you want a burger, I can flip the burger, but you want it, 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 so I want $17.50. They're thinkers. They don't take it, so I know I got it with agility, but I love the fact that you are creating critical thinkers. Because that's the only way that we're going to be able to get back to where this country used to be. We have a repertoire of social institutions. We do. But if any institution is going to get us back to where we need to be, it's going to be the educational institution. That's where it involves hands. And right now you are creating thinkers. Being able to go out there and question, not take it, and change the system for better. Mission. Mission is to equip all learners for a life of success through caring, engaging, collaborative instruction, aiming to motivate and transform students into productive citizens. When I recall when I was a sophomore teacher, teaching world history. This is reality. This is the real world for educators. I had 2 students. And they went out there, they dropped out of school. They had kids, they needed to make money, and their way of making money was through making wrong choices. One made a horrendous choice that ended up going to prison. So when we look at this, it's how can they, as board trustees, how can you all, with your superintendent, work cohesively, collaboratively, unified to create extensive, tailored academic opportunities, create great thinkers, critical thinkers, create civil citizens, because they're going to have to make money one way or the other. We want to make sure that whenever we see Mauro in the future, he's now a board consultant and not Mauro at Walmart trying to steal you all's car. Because that's reality. You look at the research, there's a major research on Poland and Germany. Poland, what they did was they kicked out all the students that were not engaged. They didn't care about school, they kicked out. So all these students started gravitating over to Germany. And the crime in Germany went up. And then Germany was like, either you do something about it, or there's going to be conflict. So that's reality. When we see students walk in our district, it's about how can we reach everybody? Because this is real. I love y'all's mission. Love it. Because that's what it's all about. It's about what can we do for the Maui, what can we do for the kids of our teachers, what can we do for everybody. So we want to make sure that when we see them in the future, it's them being police officers, engineers, plumbers. FYI, the plumbers are going to be the new millionaires. So I get it. So what is it that's out there that we can prepare our students for? Because it's changing, it's ever changing, ever evolving. Ambassador, I love this one. I mentioned earlier, as ambassadors, you are the fiscal, and everyone is watching. Everyone. The importance of a school board's management of its public behavior is crucial to its success. I'm going to tell you this, 80% of the people will judge you based on that interaction that you have with them. Is it fair? No, it's not fair. It is not fair. I'm going to tell you a story. My mother goes to middle school to pick up my sister, who's now, if I just middle school, 7th grade, middle school, picks up my sister, she's waiting there in the lobby, pasa la principal, the principal walks by, and doesn't acknowledge my mother. She's sitting there, and my mother then asks the secretary, who's that lady? Oh, she's the principal. Oh, está bien amargada. She's in a bad mood. No me saludó, like she didn't say hi. She didn't say hello, acknowledge me. But my mother doesn't know that probably she came from the superintendent's office, and they're running out a new initiative or a new curriculum, whatever it is. Probably the principal, had she met my mother on different occasions, she would have acknowledged her. But now my mother judges her based on that interaction. Fast forward, my sister already graduated. She went to UT, graduated. That's 2 years after graduation. I was over in Christmas, and we're talking about it. And we're talking about AP Solis. That's a middle school. It's an A-rated Catholic. It's doing phenomenal things. And my mother continues to talk. Oh yeah, the principal amargada. That principal went in there and changed it, but she's remembered based on that interaction. Is it fair? No, it's not fair. Why do I mention this? I mention this because I want you all to be aware that if you're at HEB and you're having a long day, because we are humans, Dr. Expensive, we are humans, you guys are humans. You have regular jobs. And politics is not always perfect. You're tired. But your constituents, your voters, your people, your community, they see you as a worker for 24/7. So that interaction that you have with them, that's what they're going to remember you. Is it fair? No, it's not fair. Act with integrity, you are a board trustee 25/7. Discussion. So as you strive to tell your district story, what is something that helps you better understand our collective work? You try to tell, you want people to know the many great things that are happening at Edgewood. What is something that helps you better understand that? Imagine you're stopped at HEB. How can you be the ambassador for Edgewood? And what would make it easier for you to be the ambassador at Edgewood? I can tell you, I'm an introvert. I can be here with some guys at HEB. If I see, okay, Mr. Strauss, I see at HEB, I'm probably gonna go this. I'm an introvert. But in this realm, you're the board trustee.
Sir, I've been waiting for it, and I kind of heard you say it, but, you know, if we have a big ego, we're never gonna accept we're wrong, and there's never gonna be respect. And I feel that that's one thing we all have. We all respect each other, what we know, and how we're gonna contribute, and that's why we feel comfortable participating. Now, when we don't respect, it's very, very controversial, very, porque, I don't know, pero I think that's what's lacking from, it's the fact that it's,
Oh, yes, sir. And that goes hand in hand with your belief that your self-worth has been violated. Like, it is. It is.
I was gonna mention, I agree to that. I'm just gonna, I guess, push back a little bit. I think we need to have a big enough ego to tell our story, because I think sometimes we don't tell our story, right? That's one thing that, you know, we make humility so much of our identity that we just don't, we don't share our story. We wait for other people to share our story, and that may have worked, because I speak to, you know, lots of our community members that are older, you know, 20, 30 years ago, they you know, they were teachers and, you know, educators, things like that, and I'm like, I appreciate it, and I think Frank was with me one time when I was talking to a community member. I was like, I appreciate what you're saying. I'm glad you were a teacher 30 years ago. However, in today's classroom, in today's educational realm, you know, whether it be the state or whether it just, you know, the community, the parent, you mentioned the parents earlier, it's different. And we need to tell our story, because I think one thing I always mention is if our students don't speak up, if they never learn, they get overlooked, right? And it's true. And I can even say it as an adult. If I don't speak up, I get overlooked for jobs, for internships, for roles. So, and with the some of our community is loud. We have to, our students are loud, because I think that's about survival. Because again, we've learned if we don't speak up enough, but then again, if we speak up too much, right? It's that we need to be loud enough to be heard, but not too loud to be ignored. You know, that people start, yeah, whining. There you go. Thank you.
So whole group discussion. Okay, so as you're speaking, I'm thinking of this out. Right now, more than ever, we need coalition. We're talking about it. I was talking with Dr. Hernandez earlier about the coalition. Talk briefly about you have a seat at the table, you're on the video. But in order to be able to share your story, there's an art and a science behind it. Because if you go too much, you're seen as a whiner. But if you're able to form coalitions amongst yourselves, then amongst your neighboring districts to continue advocating for what's in the best interest of public ed. Because right now public ed is under attack. Let's be honest. But the beauty about it is that through local governance you can continue making decisions that can affect your immediate community in a positive when we look at all the things that are going on, when we look at your role as an ambassador, I asked earlier, what can make it easier? I'm gonna give you an example. When I was a deputy superintendent, we would task our principals to create a weekly recollection of all the great things that happened, and then we would send it to our superintendent, who would then send it to you all. So you could just kind of scan it, therefore if you were stopped, you can share. And the formula is 3. You gotta have, always know 3 things that are going great. Because el que no habla otorga. I don't know if you've heard that before. You need to take charge of the narrative, drive the conversation. And I'll give you an example, a little bit of what I mean, but yeah, the soccer, I know you all have, I don't know if you all know this, but I'm a soccer fan. But you all have a very good soccer tournament. You always host a good soccer tournament here. So, how can you share the many great things that are happening out of your band, how you got sweepstakes, or your football team, or your soccer team, or the chess team, or the race team, or whatever you have going on, because it's imperative to drive the narrative, and I'll show you what I mean by that. So it's actually 3 steps to tell your district story. Be the chief communicator. Right now with all this media, it's very easy to just pick up and just put on if you happen to have a social media, like great things that are happening in Edgewood. You need to drive the narrative, because if you allow other individuals, that's what the media will drive the narrative if you allow it to drive the narrative. So you need to take charge of that. And also, it's imperative, understanding the formula behind it. So as the chief communicator, it's a we mentality, it's a group. Expand the district messaging. Share the positive things that are happening at Edgewood. Social media, newsletters, your website. That goes back to, if you don't already have this, that's a perfect opportunity for you all to put it forward, and it makes it easier for you all to know what's going on. With a click of a button, you'll find out what's going on, what's happening, and you are then able to be the chief communicators. And I mention this as chief communicators because, let's say, where I live is you need 8,000 votes. You need 8,000 votes to be able to be elected to the board. So whomever is at the board is 8,000 followers or 8,000 people that believe. So if I have a social media, it's me being able to positively influence 8,000 individuals to continue moving and sharing what's great with my district. Request to receive district and campus newsletters and articles. That makes it easier for you all to get through at least 3 things. Use these updates to amplify good news on your own channels. Again, if you happen to have any social media. And in conversation with families, taxpayers, and business owners. If the people know what's going on, then bonds, it's easier for bonds to pass. Right now, bonds don't pass. I can tell you, like at the RGV, 100% of the bonds fail. A mistrust. They don't know because they have allowed people to carry the narrative. But when you go and see these districts, I'm gonna point out McAllen. Are you familiar with McAllen ISD? McAllen is one of the bigger schools in the RGV. But you go to McAllen Gymnasium and Positano. It looks like if they filmed the movie Lean on Me. I don't know if you've heard seen the movie Lean on Me. It looks like they filmed it in that gymnasium. That's how old it is. Like and that's McAllen, the most affluent district, but their bond did not pass because of the fact that they allow people to take charge of the conversation, drive the narrative, and that's where you all come in as chief communicators. Create the elevator pitch. So develop a brief summary of your district's strengths, unique programs. What is it that you guys are known by? As I think about it, I know that you guys are advocates. That's in your DNA. Like it's historic. You're gonna advocate for what's in the best interest of students. That's what I see. I don't know what is it that's currently going on within your district that's great, that can be highlighted. If there is, you need to make sure that you're highlighting all that stuff. Use real examples from classrooms and initiatives. Will you make it relevant, relatable? It's deeper, it's stronger. When it's unrelevant, they don't care. I know that a lot of the districts that were successful, in this case like bonds, was because they had either initiatives such as the Fox, the Silver Fox. where all their older, community members had like a VIP to be able to attend the basketball games, football games, or they would often invite, them to come to the campus. And when you're there, and you see it, and then you put things, and I'm using a bond, but there's other things. Then you have more support. They trust that whatever you're putting forward is in the best interest because they've seen you as a person. Right now, they see you as, you better have not made that relationship, they see you as a board member. And what I mean by like a board member, they don't see you as a human. They think that you're a board member 24/7, they don't see the human behind all this. So be ready to share your highlights with your families, elected officials, and community leaders. Dr. Lang, you want to share something?
No, I was gonna mention that, I mean, in my role as a teacher, you know, when creating those, especially business partnerships, what I focused on a lot in the other district I work in, it was really hard for these business people to say no after they're in the classroom, you know, and that was always my hook. I'm like, hey, come visit me in my class during the day with students in the room. Hear the noise, hear the yelling, hear the screaming, but also you see the work that's being done. You see what you feel what it's like to be in a classroom. And I think even with the leadership TASB experience, to me, I'm like, this is just my day to day. Like I'm in classrooms all the time, you know, but you know, again, we get used to it, but then we forget, you know, this isn't people's, you know, jobs most of the time. They have maybe been in the classroom for years, decades. And I think it's really hard to vote against something when you see the pictures, the smiley faces, things like that, especially the
Yes.
They always, I
How
mean.
can you say no to them?
Yes. I mean, I just wanted to mention that. I just wanted to say that because I think I have to remind myself as an educator that this isn't everyone's experience. Both the good and the struggles. We need to see both. We can't just show the good. We can't just show the bad because then nothing will get done. But we have to kind of balance that and have a grounded perspective on what it looks like.
Exactly.
You know, today.
So connected for you guys. So some of what, to give you a little bit of reasoning actually for why there's some actions that we're taking. The board newsletter you get every Friday, you immerse with all kinds of things that are happening in the district. When you come to the student leadership network lunches, that's why I brought up Brooklyn earlier. You're hearing it from the children themselves. That is the good, and it is the challenge, right? She just got to saying, I don't know anything about financial literacy. Those are still challenges that we're looking at. The other thing is the when you're walking school, the performance planning meetings. Not only are you being educated on what we're being and not being, what we're going to look at in the next few months and what we're not going to look at, you're also getting to walk the schools. People are getting, you know, yes, people are visible. They know who you are. They know you're there. Remember that we have an inordinate number of employees who also live in Edgewood. That's important. So the other thing that's very micro, but I was joking with Jamie was, and then you get those annoying text messages from Dr. H every morning, where I'm sending you a highlight. I think it's at least 4 days a week. I try to give you
Love it. Thank you.
But the thing I know is like, oh my God, sir, why are you bothering me, sir? But here's the other thing you don't realize I'm doing. I have groups of people. I have all our directors. I have all our business operation directors. I have the leads in operations. I have our coordinators. I have 10 different strands that I send every morning on the clock. I added a new one this year because the academic coordinators were like, how come we don't get what you're sending on City Way? So to me, that's what I use because again, these people are living in our streets. They're going home. They're going to the carne asadas. They're going to places you can't get into and I can't get into. And I get invited. And so I think that is just putting it in the context. I do that intentionally, and I think Gloria and Amelia, because all these graphics you see, I've said it everywhere. I don't create them. I may tell them, hey, look, I saw this, I saw that. What if you did this? What if you did that? And then boom. And I try to highlight you guys. Whenever you do something, I try to put you at the center of it. That's intentional because that's my very strong way of saying I appreciate the volunteer hours you're doing. Whether it's the rummage sale or whatever you're doing. You don't have to do those things. That's never lost on us.
And I was going to mention that. I was going to say that I appreciate, first of all, whoever put your graphics together that you sent out to us in text messages, I appreciate that. I appreciate you sending them out because I'm still very much in touch with my neighborhood association, but on top of that, I have a group chat with 20 neighborhood associations. So when you send those to me, I send those out to those 20 neighborhood association presidents. So it's getting out there. It's getting out there, so kudos for doing that, because then I can turn around and send it out to my neighborhood association members and to those 15 presidents or 20 presidents now. So thank you for doing that. I did want to say one other thing, and this has been a philosophy of mine since I started working for the city of Atlanta. Worked as administrator. Two things I always tell my employees is, tell me what you need to succeed.
Love it.
The other thing I would tell my employees was, your failure is my failure. So it was always in my best interest to make sure that you did succeed in whatever task we gave you. And that was just my philosophy. So that way they didn't feel like, oh, it's your fault. It's our fault.
And it's a mindset, it's very cliche, but 90% you gotta believe. Just look at it, 90%. But yes, going back, this is the game changer, because you have all these, I've worked with both the public and private sector, and it's always productivity and return on investment. But we have found, if you look at the research behind it, that your best return on investment is through the public's opinion about a product, about you, and your product is an education. Like, that's what education are you providing. So when you do that, it's them being the ambassadors of the great things that are happening. Because when they hear from their friends, it gains credibility. So I love that, and we gotta continue. And it's about going beyond the boardroom. It's about forming coalitions, engage the community groups, Chamber of Commerce, Rotary. You mentioned your organization, 20 presidents. That's profound. That's like a massive network of the many great things that are happening in Edgewood. And kudos to Amelia. I know she's amazing. She's like the best. Like, she's amazing. Yes. Thank you, Amelia. Even as I work with her, like, she is expert at this. Ask your administration for handouts and materials. Therefore, if you happen to visit any of the community events or neighborhoods, this is who we are. This is who we are at Edgewood. And team up with another. I know that I mentioned earlier I was an introvert, so when because I'm a current member for the Rio Grande Valley Soccer Coaches Association, and we're trying to give more exposure to the South Texas and give them like exposure, great coaches, scouts, and so forth. And I found it really hard to do on my own because I'm an introvert. But when I go with a partner, we go and we speak, it makes it easier on me. So if you need to partner up with somebody, I know you mentioned Dr. Hernandez doesn't have a problem speaking. I would partner with him. If almost it's about being strategic. It's about the students, it's about the teachers, it's about the families, it's about your overall community.
Well, and that wasn't by accident, because the thing is, I don't say this often, but I had to find my voice, and I found it really in college, in university, when I was challenged to speak up. And I'm pretty sure all of us have that experience where you have to realize that, again, we don't speak up. That's when I realized if I don't speak up, I'm going to get overlooked. And I had also, going back full circle to the ladder, I had people holding the ladder and saying, you need to advocate for yourself. I'll help you, but you also need to advocate for yourself. And so once you learn it, right, once you learn your voice, it's hard to shut it off, right? When you got something to say, it's good. And that's what we want our students to do, to be able to speak up and find that voice. And then once you have it, it's now share it, share it with everybody.
This is what I'm talking about. When you get all these are things that you all can receive as either pamphlets or cards that you all can give to your community if you happen to attend any community event. And that's the story of what's going on in Edgewood. That's what I was talking about. I love this, and we're going to wrap up our session with taking charge of the narrative, driving the conversation. There's a formula to it. So interaction, I mentioned earlier, interaction is 80% of your, that interaction that you have, you're going to be judged on. So 80% of people will judge and remember you based on that interaction. It's fair, it's not fair. You are your board member 24/7. Mindset. It's not I will take care of it. No, it's we will look into it. We'll task Dr. A so he can look into it, and I'll give you all an example. Lead with dignity. I've actually had board trustees who said, I was stopped at HEB about a parent whose daughter did not make know, maybe you don't, but for them, it's important. So as a board trustee, you need to lead with dignity, empathize. So if they're coming to you and stopping you at HCD, don't cross your arms, don't roll your eyes, because for them, it's important. And at most 80% of the issues can be resolved if you just let them air out whatever is in their head. Let them, and then
You know, outside that HBS, they didn't have any complaint. They just want to say hi.
love it. Love it. They just want to do it.
I ain't gone in there just to get a bag of carrots to get out, but I ran into 4 people that just wanted to say hi.
I love it. And that's what that's not accidental. That's a reflection of what you guys are doing in the book.
When I say hi, they're like, how are you?
Yeah, that's it.
So now,
Yeah, what I was gonna say,
like, run in and out, turn it into a.
Yes, it does.
and it was intentional, because that's a conversation that we had, I mean, probably about a year ago now, that I said, I want us to be out there, and all of these graphics and all this push, it's, yeah, no, it's
Success
intentional.
is not accidental.
No, because I want everybody to be able to come up to any of us and ask us questions and challenge us, you know, commend us. But yeah, but everybody knew you already, Rudy, but
I'm an introvert.
yeah, but
So
I
this
guess
is
I guess we're all just introverts here.
This is the formula. Formula, positive greeting and warmth. So always, if you see somebody, think about something positive. And it can be such as, I actually, I don't know, like, I did it on purpose. When I greeted you all, it's about, hey, nice seeing you. Because when I say, hey, it's nice seeing you, tell me something good that's going on at Edgewood. So your mind is automatically thinking about the many great things that are happening. You are conditioned, because we're conditioned to be negative. And we're gonna be, hey, how are you? How are you? It's very plain, simple. It's like you just say it because you have to say it. But when you're like, hey, Dr. Yates, nice to see you. Oh, wow, he's happy to see you. So you are already igniting the brain to move out. You're happy. Dopamine, you're thinking good. Tell me something great that's going on with your district. It does. So you want to make sure that you always think about, let's say you're out there, and I'll talk about it. So it's positive greeting and warmth. The tone matters a lot. Hey, nice to see you. Hey, nice to see you. Changes. So, key pointers. You need to know 3 positive things going on in your district. And with the newsletters that you guys are getting, that's already a step in the perfect direction. So, know 3 things. Here we have a couple of big things that are going on. Scenarios. This scenario works 80% of the time. You have an upset parent. Hi, Dr. Hernandez, how are you? We're talking about board president Hernandez. He's at HEB, he stopped. Dr. Hernandez, how are you? Dr. Hernandez is the way you're supposed to reply, or something similar to that. Hi, it's great to see you. Starting positive, it's great to see you. It's always great to see our constituents, even though you don't want to see certain constituents, we always got to say, it's good or it's great to see you. I love your shoes. I'm doing well, thank you. I just came from the girls' varsity soccer team, and they played amazingly. They defeated the Harkin High soccer girls team. It was a great game. Also, the band recently competed in the all-region competition and received grade 1s. Not to mention that the received news that we have 32 seniors who will be graduating with their associates this May. We're so excited about all the wonderful things happening at Edgewood ISD. Thank you for asking, but I don't want to take, and then you take charge. I don't want to take time from you. Kind of putting it on them, because if they ask, how are you? And you're like, fine. You just gave them authority to come and pour everything that's wrong. But you took charge of the conversation. Thank you for asking, but I don't want to take too much of your time. I was just coming for some carrots, some cilantro, and onions, and by now they are probably asking where I'm at. Have an amazing evening. When you say have an amazing evening, and you took charge with the us. If you're like, I'm doing good, this one works 80% of the time. If you can crop it out and give it to them, that would be amazing. And this one, for the 20% it doesn't work. Upset parent. Mr. Hernandez, Dr. Hernandez, I want to tell you about my daughter that she did not make the varsity cheerleading team. I know that they have their favorites, and I believe that it is not fair. We spend thousands of dollars in the process of selecting who makes the team should be objective. So while she's telling you, this is key. This is the reason behind it. Imagine there's like a square of this size. Pardon me, focus on them, squint your eyes. It shows them that they're important, that you're looking at them, and don't do this, because that's you blocking whatever they're saying. Key pointers, squint your eyes, tilt your head. Because I'm like, no le hagas así, you gotta look like, it doesn't look right. Let them know that you are listening. That's the point. So kind of squint your eyes, a little bit. Tells them that you are listening. Then Dr. Hernandez, thank you for bringing this to our attention. That's the mindset. Our, not my attention. Our attention. At Edgewood ISD, we want to ensure that all students have a positive experience. We will inform our superintendent, who will delegate this matter to the appropriate person to investigate. You can expect to hear from them, not me. So I'm not going to call you, but of course, them. Within the next 48 hours, play with your tone of voice. And then you go in like, look at that, thank you. And that's how you drive in there and take charge of the conversation. But no te vas a quedar ahí. We're going to have you all go real big, but because of the time, I want to honor you all's time. But I know that Dr. H will provide you all with that, kind of that formula. This way you have to remember the three things. Always have three things, so you can drive the narrative and take charge of the conversation. With that said, thank you all so much for everything that you all do to make sure that every single student continues to have that their academic opportunities. It is because of you all that individuals like me have those opportunities to now be able to be here and partner with you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. All right, so that brings our evening to a close. Board members, you will get this PowerPoint in the board update, which we don't have a board update this week, so we'll have a board update next week, which is May 1st, that Friday. And with that, I will turn it back over to our board president. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, before we close out, I just want to say thank y'all for being here. I know this is a lot of work for us. That's it, thank you. No, I really appreciate you. I really do. Well, then, you know what? We'll have more meetings if you don't have us. No, some of us still work, sir. We're still on job. No, I'm kidding. But no, I really appreciate y'all. Thank you for being here. Okay, and now and staff as well, the superintendent's cabinet as well. Thank y'all for being here. Yes, thank y'all. I know it's April, it's gonna be May, there's a lot going on, so. All right.
Don't forget about media.
Media?
Media. All the recording.
Oh, and our recording, and everybody that's watching. Is that good? And Miss Amelia, thank you very much. All right, the time is now 7:55 p.m. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Okay, Ms. Castillo motions to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Lopez seconds. Is there any discussion? If we have no discussion, all those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
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 Okay, all those opposed, raise your hand and say nay. All those abstaining, raise your hand and say abstain. Okay, motion carries. Have a good night. Meeting adjourned.